Buenos dias. Yeah, we are live. Actually, we're now for really, really, really real. So this is Voron Live, where we talk about 3D printing and things that may or may not be somewhat associated with it. More likely, it's whatever we feel like. Squirrel. So, you guys gonna kind of go around the horn and say hello?
Sure, whoever wants to go first. I guess I could. I am Greg, also known as Lull Module on the Warren group. I have a V1.5 and a newly functioning V2.
Very nice.
Hi, I am David, and I am. Let's see. I have. I don't know. Hi. I do. I have two Vorons running on two Voron 2s, both running on Duet, and I'm maintaining one of the config profiles for the Duet boards.
Awesome. Adam or James, you guys want to go?
Yeah, I can. I'm unregistered. I have V2.006, also known as the Giraffe. And I have a 1.6 that I'll be building here hopefully by next weekend.
Awesome. And James, are you still fighting technical difficulties?
No, I'm here. I am James, or Army Ag, as you see me on the server. I have V2.037, and I've been around for about a year or so, and it's been an awesome community, and I enjoy contributing and hanging out and helping other people getting up and running.
Awesome. So I am multitasking and trying to stay on top of questions, comments, concerns, and everything like that across like 47 different channels. So if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves for a minute, I will be right back.
So I am, I don't know how you guys' holidays were. I am just on the tail end of a cold that knocked me out pretty much since New Year's. So hopefully I'll be able to talk like a human and not sound like a robot here. So
yeah,
seem like you're doing pretty good so far.
This is the first day that my nose hasn't been a faucet, so that's a plus, right?
Yeah.
So, and I guess I am just swapping out the tool head on one of my printers here. I had a V6 0.35 nozzle on there, and I'm just swapping it out for a Volcano with a 0.8 nozzle, I believe.
Nice.
So once I get preheated here, I am going to start a pair of Sphinx prints side by side on my two printers here. So one of them running, the other one's actually got a 0.4 nozzle loaded up. So a 0.4 nozzle on a V6 and a 0.8 nozzle on a Volcano. And I have the prints, the prints are sliced with an obscene max rate, and I'm just going to be relying on Slicer's volumetric flow limiting to try to just print at the fastest that the nozzles will melt. So it's an experiment. Gonna see how they both go. With any luck, nothing will fall over.
Yeah. Are you running ABS or PLA or?
This is going to be ABS. It's the Veracity.
Okay.
I have black loaded up for the V6, and I just am about to unspool a roll of white here onto one of the master spools. So,
question on the G-code files as far as the slicing goes. How much changing are you doing between the two? Is it just changing what the nozzle diameter is, or?
Yeah. So both. I'm using Slicer 1.3, so not the preset edition, and there's a couple other settings that are different also. Just the, so the 0.4 nozzle is going to be running a 0.5 millimeter extrusion width. The 0.8 nozzle is going to be running a 1.0 width. The 0.4 is, actually I have them both set to adaptive height, unless y'all want to see me just set it to a fixed height and just see how that goes. But I was planning on doing adaptive height at 50%. Both of them are going to be 2 perimeters and 10% infill, because I don't want to spend the entire time just printing infill. So there's not a lot of crazy overhangs or ceilings or anything really. So I think the 10% should be satisfactory for this test. Yep.
Yeah.
What infill pattern? Oh, sorry.
I always use, I want to say rectilinear. I can't remember if that's what Slicer calls it. But just, you know, it's alternating layers. So one layer is, will be lines this way. The second layer will be lines perpendicular to it. You know, I know everybody has favorite types of infill. I find that you can't beat the speed, and the one or two tests that I had seen people post blog entries about said that you know, the rectilinear was right up at the top in terms of strength also. So if I can get you know, good strength out of basically the fastest infill, that's my go-to.
Yeah.
I pretty much only change it for transparent parts or parts where it's actually important, where it'll come through, or like my cell phone case. I don't know how well this shows.
Oh, that's cool.
But this is actually
Honeycomb.
solid, and yeah, I did a honeycomb on the slicer to do that pattern.
That's cool.
Have you thought about doing what Make Anything did with the multiple STLs for like a cell phone case?
I don't think I'm familiar with that. What did they do?
Oh, so what he did is he basically took an image and used that to cut out multiple STLs for doing multicolor on a single nozzle.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'll
and so
shoot you over
just,
the video.
Yeah, just for multicolor for visual, or was he doing different materials?
It was a visual, just to like do different colors.
Oh, is this the guy that did? He did a bunch of multicolor for the first, basically for the first
Yep.
layer, and then after that it was just okay. Yeah, I do remember that. So yeah, I didn't. Nobody's ever accused me of having aesthetic sense. So the geometric hex fill did what I wanted it to. So have you guys, is that something you guys have ever played with?
That multicolor stuff?
Yeah, doing anything with multiple colors or multiple passes or anything?
I haven't on that level yet. I have on the level just of swapping out at layer height.
Yeah, yep. And I know Doc has a system down for using his runout sensor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if it's a system. It's more just I throw filament at it, and when one runs out, I just throw more at it, and I just keep going. So it works so far, but I don't promise it will continue working. It's more just kind of, you know, screw it, we'll do it live sort of stuff.
Yeah.
As far as that one goes, like I've done the same thing because I've got the same runout sensor as Doc, and that's how I determined my first color for the thing hand that I printed for one of my coworkers for an Apple Watch stand, because I was doing it in just pride flag colors, and so I just loaded one up of the Paramount test spools, and once that ran out, I moved on to the next one.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you have a photo of that, by the way? It might be kind of cool if you could post a link to that photo or something in the YouTube chat, just so people could see what you were talking about.
Yeah, I can.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll mention that I also have the same filament sensors, the TriangleLabs one that the other two guys have. And it's such a simple thing, and I'm sure that you could take one of those KW10 switches that we use for the end stops, and just print a little case for it, and you could make your own that work just fine. But yeah, I just paid them, and they mailed me a couple.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine going back to not having one anymore. I used to stress out, like every time I was going to start a print, I'd look and it's like, oh yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then it'd get down to the end and I'd be like, okay, how many wraps is that? That looks like about 20 wraps. Let me do some math. What's the length on that? You know, it's not worth it. Just put the sensor, put the runout sensor on there, and the controller on Duet, I have it configured. So yeah, the runout, it'll just go pause. And it will drop the nozzle to a standby temp. So if it pauses in the middle of the night, it's not sitting there baking filament. So you get up and you toss a new spool in and prime it and hit go, and it just picks up and keeps going. So
oh, that's a good idea about the dropping temp. I need to add that to my config.
Yeah. See, I don't drop the temp, but usually I'm doing the filament changing stuff when I'm at work, working from the house. So I'll be kind of around. So the longest it'll bake, it'll be like 30, 40 minutes, which is still bad for it, I know, but it's not like sitting there for 8, 9 hours while I'm asleep. So what are you guys printing that's interesting other than David, who's going buck wild with
I mean, for me, today is one of the first days that I've been back in my office for over 2 weeks. So it's just been me pre-assembling 1.6 parts, not doing any printing. We had adopted a dog just before New Year's, and he required just 100% of our time, and took him back yesterday because it's just not going to work.
Did you have other dogs also, or was this the first one?
First one with my wife. Like, we've got a cat. The cat is great because she just figures out her own shit, but the dog just needed 100% of our time. So it's been a rough couple days.
Yeah, but better you guys realize it than try and force it and make things worse.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that's always a hard decision too.
Yeah, whoever adopts him though is going to get a pretty kick-ass starter kit because he gets all of the stuff that we got for him.
Awesome.
So how's everybody else's holiday period?
It was good. I was out of town for a week and some change and didn't worry about printing a single bloody thing. So that was kind of nice to get out of the printing rat race for a little bit, just because I've printed so much for other people that it's nice just to worry about not spooling up what's next.
Yeah, with a little bit of traveling and a little bit of visiting local friends, and then getting sick. I have not done a lot of printing for the last couple of weeks, so it's nice to get back into it. I did manage to. The last time we talked, I was just starting to rebuild V2 number 5, and I was able to finish that up before the holidays. So hence I have both of them online. But yeah, I was pretty much got it finished. Did a couple checkout prints, and then unloaded the filament, threw it in the dryer, and
Yep.
And here I am a month later, back to it. So, yep.
What are you running for a filament dryer?
I just have a food dehydrator that I actually already had for like backpacking reasons. It's just this round Nesco thing, and I printed. So it has these trays, and the trays happen to the center of this tray is exactly the right size to go on a spindle or spool.
Oh, nice.
The only problem is it's too tall, and so I just whipped up these little individual sections that just raise it up high enough. So that's what I use.
Do you have a bed that is actually big enough to print one of those, like just one circular?
What? No. I printed it in 4/4 was the best I could do. Yep.
Yeah. The one that I have, I designed a model that actually is just a vase mode print, so it takes a total of like an hour to print one for a full spool.
Yeah, I've got one of the, or I can print the master spool, the size limited ones.
Mm-hmm.
So these, but I haven't tried to do the full boat one.
Yep. You have a 250, right?
I've got a 250 and a 320, and so I'm sure the other one probably would fit on a 320. I just haven't dove back in to try it yet.
Yeah, and the 320, that's a converted V1.
Yep, it's a converted V1.
Yep.
That I converted to V2 spec, and so yep.
Well, and the full size does fit on a 250 also, FYI. So.
Oh well then.
Yep.
I will give that another look. I've been using just eSun spools where I unbolt them, drop the veracity core in, and just bolt it back together, and we're good to go.
Oh yeah, I heard that was a thing, but I didn't know what there's like you have to do some adapter.
I didn't. Maybe I just got lucky. It was literally just slam the pieces back together.
I think
tighten
there's
that
like
M5 and. I did not use the spacer. There may be a spacer you need to use that you probably should, but
is that just? Yeah, just I guess I'm looking at the veracity. It might be just a little bit wider than the because the eSun spools are pretty narrow, right? But it's like right at the limit there. It looks like you could fit it in.
So I don't know. I've not actually tried using it. I just know it fit. So yeah.
The veracity spools fit a little less than those spool enclosure things. I ordered about 6 or 7 of those when they went on sale a week or two ago, and that's all I've been using for the past couple of weeks. They're a little loose, but they work.
So pro tip, guys. I do this every time. When you swap out your tool head for the Volcano, don't forget to move the inductive probe.
I second that. I do it every single time.
I do it every time, yep.
It's such a pain in the ass because I swap it out, and then as soon as I finish bolting it on and clipping everything in, turning on the printer, oh shit, I forgot to move the probe.
I usually remember when I run the bed leveling and it goes and smashes down and doesn't stop.
Oh, I haven't done that yet. I always remember as soon as I turn on the printer, I'm like, fuck.
You're a better man than I.
You need to put one of those remove before flight style tags on it.
Oh yeah, yep.
That wouldn't be a bad idea.
So how many of you guys do swap out your tool heads?
I don't do regularly, when I say regularly, I mean like maybe once or twice a month.
And what is your swap for? Do you do different nozzles, or do you do different heater blocks? Do you do the Volcano?
I switch from Volcano to just V6. Once I get the 1.6 going, I'll be switching more between just V6 nozzle diameters, because my V6 I plan to use more as just a PLA machine.
Yeah, yep. You know, that's the other thing that I'm planning on doing. I'm still waiting on a couple extra of the 4010 blowers, but I'm planning on having a set of hot ends that are for PLA using a PTFE heat break, because I don't have the skills necessary to successfully print PLA on an all metal. So
interesting, because when I first started printing, one of the first upgrades that I did was upgrading my Monoprice Maker Select V2 to all metal, and I haven't had any issues as far as like PLA goes with that.
Okay.
I don't know. I just have always been really negative on the PTFE heat breaks myself, just because I know that they degrade over time, and I don't need that overtime to happen while I'm doing a big job.
I've been running the titanium TriangleLabs heat breaks. Zero issue with anything I throw at it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was definitely having a heat creep related jams. And at first I was running just 10 millimeter thick hot end fans. And they were not, the flow rate wasn't very good either. They were nice and quiet. But when I was diagnosing that, I put an extra thermistor into the bottom fin of the heatsink, and saw that while I was running a print, that bottom of the heatsink was getting up to about 65 C, which that's not good for PLA. So, so that's also, I guess, a word of warning for people. I know I see a lot of people wanting to do the Noctua fans and get it like super quiet. You want to have enough airflow to make sure that your heatsink is staying cold. Otherwise, you can start to run into heat creep issues. So,
all the airflow, all the
airflow. Yep.
The Noctua fans are, in my opinion, a very bad choice, and it's not even looking at it from just a Voron standpoint. It's I have coworkers who have the Prusa Mark III, and all of them have, basically everyone that I know with a 3D printer that has Noctua fans on it has heat creep blocks all the time.
It can't shove the air.
No, it can't. It just at all.
They're great for case fans if you want to put one, to cool your electronics. Great for that. But on a hot end, it just can't shove the air through it.
Yeah.
I had heat creep issues on my MP Select Mini when I put the 4020 Noctua on it.
I had issues with Noctua on mine. I got clogs and heat creep and just random issues. And once I swapped out to a better fan, they just all went away. It was great.
Yep.
See,
20 millimeter Thunon fans, 7.7 cubic feet per millimeter. They're a tank. They're a little loud, yeah, but close the door.
Yeah, I've got Sun-Ons in both of my rigs. I never had an issue with the Noctua that was in my V2.0 that I noticed, but once again, it was an ABS only rig, which allows you to get away with a little bit more there.
Yeah,
a little bit. So I don't know, but I run Sun-Ons now.
Is when you're gonna hit it.
Yeah, and I'll say I never had a problem printing ABS with that 4010 fan, that slower fan. Never had a problem printing ABS, and when it was for a project that I was printing some stuff for somebody else. He needed it done in PLA, and I smashed my head into the desk for like a week. So yeah, it's just it's the ABS handles those extra temperatures in the heat break a little better. But yeah, if the PLA, I think really will get you there.
Even PETG can run into, or even PETG can be one of those filaments that handles those kind of things better. Because like on my FT5 that I had, I was getting heat creep like crazy on both ABS and PLA, but PETG just like was able to power through it. And I don't know if that's just because the filament itself is a little bit more rigid and kind of slick, but heat creep is just one of those things where I think people often are trying to get away with as minimal cooling as possible to save on a couple decibels of volume.
Mouse approval factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real one.
Yeah, and that was that was actually one of the huge things with the Voron for me was I had a MP Mini Delta, and man, that thing is loud.
Oh yeah, that thing is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, it's not just that. Like you've got the all metal frame, which you think, hey, it's rigid, it's awesome. That all metal frame is just a giant megaphone.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, and just compared to, with that as the baseline, getting the Voron built, it was so quiet. It's so quiet.
Yeah,
So.
My wife hated the Monoprice Maker Select V2. My wife hated the FT5 even more, which the FT5 is on rails, so you'd think that it would be quieter, but that's not true because the FT5 is a hot pile of shit. And then after I got my V2 built, she basically just told me, like, well, if you're building another Voron, I don't really care because then I can actually sleep.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah, when the noise with fans is different than the motor noise too. That a lot of people, they try to get fans because they try to get quieter. A constant droning fan is nothing compared to the whir of motors throughout the night. That will keep you up. A fan, you'll tune it out very quickly.
Yep.
The motors make like a dot matrix style sound that just whines and whirs and irritates the
Man, the kids these days don't know what a dot matrix printer is.
Man, my first like 3 printers were all dot matrix ones, so I know very well. And when they put it in quiet mode, it was still like you could hear it all the way across the house, that screaming and like the machine gun.
It's just
Did your lights flicker?
Frustrating.
Did your house lights flicker when it was printing?
No, my house lights didn't flicker, but that may have been because our electrical system was over spec than anything else.
What's really funny is one of my earliest memories as a kid is my dad getting mad at me because I was disassembling the dot matrix printer for his self-owned business.
Oh, oops.
I actually did a...
Go ahead.
Oh, I did a similar thing with a VCR. And this is one of those, I was very young. This is my memory of the story. I'm sure if you ask my mom, she might remember it differently. But what I remember was, I guess, it was early mid 80s. We got a VCR, and it wasn't necessarily a consumer commodity at that point. It was it's a relatively significant Christmas purchase, and so yeah, I one day I sat down on the floor with the tools and I took it all apart, and the story as I remember it is that my mom was initially horrified. She was sitting at the table working, and she decided that instead of yelling at me, she would just sit and watch and wait. And when I was done taking it apart and looking at it, I just put it all back together and put it back in the shelf, and it still worked. And she figured, hey, he learned something. Maybe he'll be good for something someday.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're looking at electronics from that time frame, like everything's just so huge, it's kind of hard to screw it up if you just pay attention while you're disassembling it. I know that if I was a kid now and tried to disassemble something, I'd totally fuck it up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Try to disassemble your iPhone.
Oh fuck! I hate doing that shit.
My mom jokes that, so she came up a couple of weeks to visit me, and so I had my workbench, and I was in the middle of actually rebuilding my 1.6 into a 2.1, and so she made the joke. It's like, so your workbench is kind of like your bed or under your bed used to be when you were a kid, only now you're putting stuff back together as opposed to taking it apart. So,
Yeah, yep.
But so actually, that kind of, speaking of 1.6s, 1.5s, and everything else, we've got the 1.6 that was introduced, and I know Adam, you're building one. What do you guys think about the 1.6 versus the 2.1?
I mean, for me, I'm building 1.6 for a PLA machine. I do plan on building a printer hat for it, just to supplement when I do need some ABS. But for the most part, it's just going to be my PLA machine I've got a couple of potential gigs that I can just print off some stuff for, or if there's anything that I can do for my wife as far as jewelry. So it's just going to be kind of like my basic machine for doing basic stuff. It's not going to be my 2.0 that is actually doing the real work.
I never had the 1.0 series. I know a bunch of you guys have. One thing I remember hearing about it was just that it was a workhorse. You know, it's like keep it printing 24 hours a day for, you know, however long you guys have had them. So and then I think the pitch at this point is that like both platforms have their advantages. One of the advantages of the 1.6 is that it's a lower price point.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I think, something for people that are, you know, starting to look at the Voron community and at the printers and trying to decide which way to go. You know, it's not the end of the line for either of them, but that's one of the factors that you can use to make that decision.
Yeah. The lower price point is a huge thing. It's also a simpler build. If you've never built a printer before, if you're just looking to get your feet wet, it's, you know, quote unquote, it's a bog standard Core XY printer, 5 motors, a single ramps, put clipper on it. We recommend, but you could still do Marlin if you really want to. It's not outside what most people would consider simple.
Yeah, and the quality that you can get out of a 1.5, 1.6 is pretty good. Like every part for my 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, whatever, you know, thing, whatever revision you want, all of the parts on that were printed on my 1.5 PETG, and then it printed its own ABS parts.
Mm-hmm. And then also looking at like for me, I came from picking up the FT5 back in the day when I was trying to get away from my Maker Select or monoprice Maker Select V2, and the assembly manual for that was just absolute garbage, just a piece of trash. And then I was trying to look up how to convert it to a Core XY, and I found Voron. And I was like, oh, shit. This is a much better manual. This would have been a much easier build. So it definitely is a easier build. And then also, like, part of me is just coming from the standpoint of I want to build the other style just because I really appreciate the thought and consideration that goes into Voron.
Yeah. To me, the 1.6 almost is going to be I'm going to say connoisseur's printer, because a lot of people, when they see Voron, are immediately going to want to go for the 2.1 because it is the coolest thing ever. I mean, once you get it built and configured, it is just push the button and it goes. It levels all the stuff that, you know, you'd spend hours doing, leveling with the feeler gauges and everything. 2.1 does for you. But those of us who've kind of been around and whatnot, at least me, I'm like looking at it, I'm like, I want something that's a simple tank of a workhorse. I can set it and forget it. I can still, you know, I'll put a hat on it and run ABS all day long. But I don't know how much the community is going to pick up on the 1.6 versus just running full boat to the 2.1. And honestly, I would recommend, if you have not built a printer before, look hard at the 1.6 because it is so much easier. I could build a 1.6 in a Saturday. If I had all the printed parts and everything handy, I could build a 1.6 in a Saturday. A 2.1 is going to probably be 2 weekends, to be very honest. And that's having built 2.0, 2.1s, and torn down and rebuilt both of my 2.1s at least once a piece. So I've done this a lot.
Yep. One thing I do want to add, if you are deciding to go with the 1.6, stick with the stock size. The V2 goes up to 350 cubed. Don't be scaling your V1 that size. I have a 300 by 300 V1. It's actually getting converted to a V2 because at the size I built it, it can't perform to what it should perform as. It's just too big. The weight's up too high. So if you want to go big, do a V2.
Yeah, the 1.6, to be very honest, last time I talked with Max, and I think a couple of us were around for that, the 1.6 does not support going bigger than the 230 by 230 by 230 build volume. Like, that was an intentional decision to make it not support scaling because we wanted to retain the performance and the everything there. But we've all seen when you go larger with those rods, even using ABS, an 8mm rod, when you've got something in the dead center of it, you're going to get a little bit of bow, both in X and Y. And then it just, you start getting wonky leveling and everything else. So stick with a 230 by 230 by 230. And very honestly, that's not a bad thing. I actually like printing with my 250 by 250 by 250 V2 more than I like it with my 320 by 320 by 320, because the little 250, I can get a little bit faster. And I think, and maybe it's all just in my head, I think that the little 250 is putting out slightly better print quality.
Shorter belt, it's got a lighter gantry. It's leaner, so it'll perform a little bit better. So that's probably why.
There's another aspect to keep into consideration, and like, sure, everyone thinks that they need to have a printer that will never fail, but as you scale up the print size, you're going to increase your likelihood of a catastrophic failure that is going to put you behind. And for me personally, when I've printed up models that are very large models, like I did one that took an entire month to print, and 6 kilograms of PLA.
Dear Jesus.
One failure towards the end of a print is a catastrophic failure. It's terrible. Breaking things down into smaller form factors is just really, really beneficial. Sure, it might save you a little bit of post-processing time to print off something in one shot rather than two, but ultimately, end of day, what does it affect you as far as your total time spent on it if you do encounter a failure?
And the other, the other side of that is, you've got the super long prints, but the flip to that also is, if you're like me at all, you watch that first layer like a hawk, because if you can see how the first layer is going to go, you can tell how the whole rest of the print's going to go. So, like, if I've got that giant 320 with a bed full of 37,000 different little parts, I'm standing there watching that thing for 2 hours, just making sure that first layer goes down well. So I would far rather have something a little smaller, still fast, if not even a little faster. And I mean, the 1.6, from what I've heard, I think Max is the only one who has a running 1.6 right now.
Correct.
But he's still getting, the 100 millimeters a second speeds that we all want.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff learned in the V2 was backported to the V1.6. So you're getting pretty much all the bells and whistles minus gantry, leveling, and rails, essentially. So tunable belts, the swappable to hot end, you're getting a lot of upgrades.
For me, there's 2 things that I really love that were ported back from 2.0 or not 2.0, 2.1 to 1.6, and that is the tool head and the ability to tension your belts without having to fuck with whatever's going on your carriage.
Yeah, belt tensioning on the 1.5 was the one thing that was really a pain. And so I'm glad to see that tensioning was brought back into the 1.6. That's actually one of the things I miss from the 2.0. The tensioner knobs, those were nice.
The click was satisfying.
But they were very nice, but the coffins were...
No, the belt coffins are called... Yeah, the coffins are called a coffin for a reason. Your belts go there to die. But like, if we could have figured out some way to have brought those tensioner knobs forward and let the belt coffins die, I would have been all about that. But I get the considerations that were made and the tweaks that have been done. I know I can not BS it. I can tension it pretty well, knowing what I know now, freehand, and just use the M3 screws that are in the front idlers to get it perfect. But it's not as idiot proof as those knobs at the back. But that's neither here nor there.
And it's I guess one argument in favor of what we have on 2.1 is the knobs are great and they make it so you can just go click click to set it, but that's something you do once. And so for me, the effort of actually pulling out an M3 driver it might take a couple extra minutes and you have to do a balance on the top and bottom. It's a little bit more work, but again, it's something you do once. And so it would be nice to have a quick little tensioner dial, but not at the expense of having the idler axles be perfectly vertical.
Yep.
And they take up a lot of room.
Yep.
Scrap it all. V2.3 will be the thing. No, I'm joking.
I'll reprint.
One question did come up in the chat. It comes up every time. Dual extrusion on the Voron. As of now, no plans for it. There's nothing in the works. There's no designs, and frankly, there's no good solution for dual extrusion that we think is worth putting on the machine yet, essentially.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, so the original 1.0 and 1.5 did support the Chimera. The 2.1, and 1.6 have all gone straight to V6. And that's a very conscious decision because leveling the nozzles in a Chimera is difficult. It is very difficult. And if you don't get it absolutely bang on perfect, you're going to be printing and that nozzle is going to slip a little bit and it's going to strike a print and it's going to fail miserably. And then you've got a bunch of other crap that's going on with it too. And then on top of that, I mean, so then you look at the Cyclops. So the Cyclops is a 2 in, 1 out, but it's got a 90 degree, like 290 degrees to get down to the nozzle, which I am no engineer, no scientist or anything else. But that to me just seems like it's asking for trouble. The multi-material stuff, Prusa hasn't gotten it right. And I mean, we all have kind of voiced our opinions on Joe Prusa. He's done a lot for the community, but he's a really good salesman on top of an okay printer designer, in my opinion. That's just me.
You kind of opened, or I had an epiphany right when you were moving your hands around when you mentioned leveling the Chimera. And that was an aspect that I didn't think about when it came to leveling on a V2. Because we tram the gantry to the bed. So how in the absolute fuck are you going to actually get those nozzles to follow that that profile?
Dave got it.
Yeah, I saw Dave doing it. I saw the hand gestures. David, all right, you need to say something so we can get this on. All right, here, I'm zooming in on you. Hand gestures time.
Yeah, so just what was being said there. Did you? Oh, I don't know if my display just hung here.
I focused on you.
So. Okay, so yeah, you have 2 nozzles on your hot end, and if you get those, if they're not quite level like this, and you're printing with this higher nozzle, you're going to get a nozzle strike with that lower one when it comes and moves by. So you get everything perfectly level on a machine where you are you have a flexible gantry specifically to conform to the bed, and now all of a sudden you're going to you're going to re-level, and you've just knocked out your perfect alignment.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that finally clicked for me after however long. Personally, I don't want to screw around with that kind of bull crap, but
yeah, and I I think that we all would love dual extrusion, at least as something to play with.
Oh, I'd love to have PTFE or
Yeah.
whatever.
What's the
hips for ABS
yeah,
and
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember the PLA one because who prints in
PVA.
PLA?
Yeah,
PVA.
and it's definitely something that anybody is welcome to brainstorm ideas on how to solve that. But yeah, we'd all love to play with it. It's just a hard problem, I think, and so one day we'll get there.
If you really wanted to, you could throw a Y splitter above the carriage and try doing it that way. You could slap a pallet or a Prusa MMU on it. Those technically would work. I don't see why not.
Okay.
But you'd have to, I don't know if Clipper supports it yet or RepRep firmware. And you would have to do all the tuning, plus Bowdens are long on a V2. It's just the nature of the beast. That's a lot of retractions. That's a lot of things to go wrong.
Yeah, and I mean the whole MMU thing. As I said, Prusa hasn't gotten it cracked himself. I mean they've had what 3 revisions now of the MMU,
and the
so
MMU only feeds a direct drive extruder. It doesn't actually extrude directly into the hot end itself.
Yep.
So actually, the MMU wouldn't work on a Voron.
There are effectively 3 solutions that are good for multi-material. One is Prusa's MMU. Like it is good for the Prusa platform. It's not good for outside of that necessarily. There's the pallet. The pallet's really nice, but it's also $600. And then there is
IDEX.
IDEX ultimately is the only solution that isn't dealing with the same issues that all of the others are dealing with. So those purge blocks, that just complete waste of filament, and then also dealing with those offsets for the nozzles. IDEX can compensate for that, whereas you can't compensate for that easily with a Chimera.
IDEX doesn't work on Core XY though, at least to my knowledge, because then you're stacking a whole other set of XY motion on top of it. So it just, when
we
you
need
see
to run
in access.
Now on the Duet forums, there's a couple of really crazy folks running Core XYUs that are like IDEX voodoo stuff, but these are guys who have no other life.
It's
a lot of money.
It's a heavy application, though. It's not something that we could easily drop onto a moving gantry because we'd need to take our 2020 extrusions and move to 2040, and we'd need to have double the steppers on the gantry. So it's not feasible for the V2 to go in an IDEX platform.
So you're saying that 2020 is too noodly for that application?
100%, it is too noodly.
Another thing that comes up is the E3D tool changer. There's zero anything in the works for that as well. If you see that how the E3D one works, it's a traditional Core XY, and it backloads, I believe. We'd have to rotate it 3 or 180. So you'd be loading them the other way around that E3D does. So your back of your printer will now be your front, just because of the way a V2 is set up. And then also you'd have to have all that mechanical and support for the tool heads at the front at the top. So every time you do a tool change, you'd have to rise the Z max, swap your tool, and then come all the way back down to your print. That's a lot of work. Actually, a V1 would be more likely to support the tool changer than a V2, at least mechanically.
I mean, I know all of you don't have 500Z like I have sitting behind me, but making a 500Z move just to do that, no.
Yeah.
Each time. So each time you change, you go to Max Z, you would pick up the tool head, and you come all the way down to your purge. So now you need because it does a purge during the move as well. So now you either have a purge bucket way up top, or you come down and you're purging in air, because you can't have a purge bucket following you. It doesn't work on a V2. It just introduces so much you have to work around.
Yeah, the V2 the V2 design is really designed as the pinnacle of single extrusion, single purpose printers. It is designed to do one thing really, really well. It is designed to print ABS, polycarbonate if you're really crazy with it, and do it the best it can. like changing stuff around, multi-materials and everything like that. That is where other experimental designs come in. This is designed to be a pinnacle tool. It is one thing and done well. It's a scalpel. It is not a steak knife.
Pretty much. That's
But
how my machine is set up. It runs Voron parts 24/7 pretty much, constantly, without issue.
That is the life of the V2.
Yep.
yep,
Looks like Maglin joined us and Andre.
Yep. Yeah, Andre, Jeremiah, welcome.
Hello. Good news, everyone. China is shipping cheaply to Canada.
And you don't print eggs anymore?
Yeah, well, supposedly. We'll see when I install my new gantry.
So we now have the two Kazakhstani ambassadors present.
Yes. Yeah, we need to get full G in here.
But yes, for any of if there's anyone watching who's Canadian, Canada Post, which is our USPS up here in Canada, they went on strike last month, so they stopped taking any packages from China. So AliExpress pretty much removed all the free shipping options. So it was like DHL or FedEx or some other random Russian shipping company. So for a while, everything costs an extra $50 for those $3 pulleys from China. So things have been at a standstill, and it's finally back. So we're happy.
Yeah, it's been actually 2 months.
Yes,
that's how long it took for China to realize we're not on a strike anymore. Well, yeah, good news. Since like last Wednesday, I think some of the new like TriangleLabs, they now offer e-packet, and it's gonna take like 2-3 weeks instead of 4 months.
So I am going back and catching up on the chat itself. So someone said, so 1.7 will have a tool changer. No, it will not. If you want it to have a tool changer, fire up Fusion 360 and go for it, man.
There was a
That's on you. There was, but I mean, honestly, has that ever stopped me from being pedantic before?
No.
There you go.
I've known you for long enough, Doc, to know that that's not going to stop you from being pedantic.
One thing I want to take up, just because on that topic about if you want to do it yourself. This came up in the chat the other day. I kind of want to go over it again, just so we kind of have it on record here. Modifying the frame. Extrusions, we recommend Misumi 2020. It's some places you can't get it. I do believe there is an alternative in Europe. It's like 5mm Motetis or something like that, if somebody wants to correct me. But China extrusions, they have that little dimple or cutout so you can't center your rail. Now, some people have brought up using tubing, square frame from Home Depot, like you name it, people have brought it up. I just want to go over this quickly. So you want to build your Voron. For a record, my 250 cost me about $150 tax in for the frame from Misumi US dollars. That comes pre-drilled, pre-tapped. You need an Allen key. You screw it together. It's done. You print your parts, you throw them on. So you want to use something else. You want to use that square tubing from Home Depot because you can build the whole frame for, say, $50. So you save $100 off the bat. How many man hours do you think it would take to redesign every part to be adapted to that new system? And not only redesign, reprint, and test, because you don't know if you're, in a 3D model, if that's going to actually work in real life. How many man hours? If you make $20 an hour, being generous, that's 5 man hours. Do a little overtime, you can pay for your frame. It'll save you in the end, because guess what? You went, you saved, you busted your butt, you spent 4 hours, you're an hour ahead, you have your everything designed for that square frame. 2.2 just dropped. You got to redesign every part now to be compatible, because you want whatever quality of life change may happen in 2.2. Oh, 2.3 just dropped too. Stick with the design. It'll save you a lot of headaches. Money isn't just the dollar value. You got to take the man hours into account.
The time
That's-
value of money.
That's
Time
a
is
very
money,
fair
friend.
point.
I gotta add something that if you want to spend $50 on like Home Depot channel whatever, get the Chinesium. You're gonna spend $550 to get like 2020 extrusions from China. Yes, you might have issue with the rails, but don't spend $50 in square channel, please.
Yeah,
You'll
and
have a lot better luck with Chinese extrusions. You won't be able to offset the Z rails, so you won't be able to enclose the printer as well. You can slap on some foam tape to kind of bump the panels out a bit. There are ways around it if you cannot get the Misumi or the whatever European standard works. Because we do know not everyone can get Misumi, unfortunately.
If you really want to go cheap, just get 4Z from Misumi. Like I actually had them, so I used them. So I mean, if you really want to be cheap, you can get 4 of the real stuff, and then the rest get the cheap.
There is another aspect that I'd like to add on to this. If you do not have a shop and you have never cut aluminum extrusions before and you have never tapped them before, and you also don't intend to get a shop to do all of these things, pay Mizumi to do it. I was cutting down my FT5 frame to build my 1.6, and after about an hour and a half of cutting 3 extrusions and tapping them, I said, fuck this. I'm just going to give them some money.
Oh, man, you need
and I'm going to move on with my life.
Oh, you need dedication, man.
I tapped the extrusions for my V1 to save a few bucks. When I ordered my V2, I paid Misumi to do it because, you know what, I work in a tool shop. I tap holes for a living. I'd rather just, clock an extra half hour overtime and just pay somebody to do it because I ain't got time for that shit anymore.
I am a very fancy person. I walk through life in very nice shoes, and I am not going to do that shit myself.
And that's the thing with you guys. I work on a freaking PC all the time. It's fun for me.
Oh, it's not fun for me.
It's not
like
for me.
-20 in Montreal right now.
The cutting by hand is the worst part. Honestly, if I could cut a 90-degree fucking cut myself, I wouldn't care.
And you bring up a good
fine.
I've done that.
I can't
bring up a good point on the 90-degree cut.
Oh, you needed the mirror, so.
Yeah,
So,
and to be
doing it by hand.
Do it.
The 90-degree cut is really important because you have to make sure those joints butt up square. So if your cut is like that, or even a little like that, your frame has got a nice bit of gangsta lean to it. So if you're not absolutely sure you can get dead nuts on getting a flat cut on that extrusion, I recommend paying someone else to do it. I mean, hell, Misumi actually sent out a batch of extrusions for a couple of people recently where their cuts were off. And if Misumi can get it wrong, I'm pretty sure some of y'all can get it wrong too. So
when I had said something about 3 hours, about 3 extrusions cutting.
Man, you gotta get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
a good portion of that time was spent with a file just trying to fix what I fucked up.
Yeah. I kind of get it. If you want to cut your frame, I'd say no. But I cut the gantry, which is a bit, you got some leeway on the gantry.
Yeah, so the gantry you can BS your way through, especially the back rail. The back rail, Max designed it, so it was like minute of eyeball where it's like, yeah, close enough. We're gonna go with it.
That's because we had to chop down our V2 front extrusions to make the V2.1 back one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll freely admit I went ahead and just ordered a new back rail from Misumi because I was ordering other parts for another printer. So, like that little V2 like back rail that or the 2.1 back rail, like all of like 100 millimeters of it was an additional additional $5. Yeah, screw it.
Misumi extrusions are actually not that expensive when you look into it. They're relatively cheap compared to China, considering you're getting them tapped and cut bang on to size. You don't got to worry about them.
So I kind of want to piggyback off this here because you're all saying the same thing in multiple different versions, and that is people need to put a value on their time.
The time value of money.
Because, well, not just money, just your time. People, as you get older, you start to realize, your time is money. Even if that time is spent sitting in front of the computer talking with a bunch of dudes talking about time is money. If you want to do stuff on your own, like the tapping, well, if you've never done it before and you're going to save yourself $50, you might end up breaking a tap in your extrusion. And guess what? You're not getting it out. If you do, you are near godlike, because that stuff, usually if you break it, it's stuck in there. And unless you have an EDM, which you don't if you're tapping your own, most likely. You're buying another. Yeah, we know you have access.
Look at me.
Now the world knows. Now the world knows. But you just need to put a value on your time. And if that's only $5 an hour, then that's okay. But
That's a lot.
Yes, some of us put 20, 50, maybe $80. I think if you put more than that on your value on your time, you're probably not going to be making a 3D printer.
But your wife.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
so my name, everyone refers to me as Doc. So I have a doctorate. All right, that's kind of implied. And even the value of my time is valuable. It's just being honest here. Like, there is a line. Like, I built my own 3D printers because I think it's cool and I think it's fun. But I am not going to tap my own extrusions, drill my own blind joints, or any of that stuff, because there's a line. I want to get everything and I want to build. I don't want to have to drill and cut and then cut again and then cut again and then cut again, because while it is measure twice, cut once, it's still cut once and then fuck, I got it wrong. I got to do it again.
Yep.
So I will pay that extra money just to have most of my Saturday bolting the frame together, as opposed to, cleaning up my mess and then having to order it again because I cut it and I got it wrong to the point where I can't fix it. But that's just me. I mean, I say this, but that's just me. If that is something you enjoy, and that's the thing, this is a hobby for pretty much all of us. If it's something you enjoy, if you have the capabilities, like Maglin has pretty much a machine shop in his garage. So if you have the capabilities of doing that sort of stuff yourself and the equipment, and you enjoy that sort of thing, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying decide where it's best to spend the value of your time in this process. If the value of your time and the enjoyment you gain out of it working in your machine shop, doing these cuts and everything else, balances out, dude, have at it. That's awesome. I'm envious that you've got a garage that you can do that in, to be very honest. For me, I wanted to be able just to dive in and start building. So I paid Masumi to do it. And that's calculus that you have to juggle.
And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I have the capability to tap. I have the capability to cut. I have the capability to do the majority of the stuff that I paid Masumi to do. And yet I still gave Masumi my hard-earned money. Now, I learned my lesson because I tried it with V1. I did my own. Oh, I didn't try it. I did it. But I spent too much of my time. I do not like tapping.
It's so much
It
fuckery.
sucks.
Yeah, no, I haven't met a single person that goes, "Oh my God, yes, I'm doing 500 holes today." Woo! I've never met that guy.
Even
that.
3 holes is just a pain in the ass, because you get the tap in as far as you need it to go, and then you back it off,
And you realize
and then
you
clean
weren't
it
all
out.
the way.
Well, even you just clean it out and everything, and then you go to screw in the bolt, and the bolt goes in halfway. It's like, well, what the fuck happened?
What? You get your drill, you get your shitty Chinese tap, you get some random oil. Ooh,
I don't
yeah.
live
That's
in Canada.
aluminum. That's aluminum.
And whoever
Try
is saying,
H13.
whoever, oh my
Oh,
God,
yeah, that's the thing.
let's not talk crazy. That's 4 on 3. Okay, whoever is using isopropyl alcohol as a lubricant, please stop.
That's what she said.
Oh my
It's
God.
really funny. My wife said the same thing.
It leads to rashes. It leads to burns. Your doctor's not going to like you and look at you cross-eyed.
Oh, you scared a cat with that.
Is that Volcom's old V1 frame sitting behind you there, Maglin?
Yeah. Oh, can you see? Yes, this is Volcom's right here.
Build
Yep.
it.
Well,
How's it not broken and formed into a singularity?
he got rid of it first.
Hey, just so you
Yeah.
know, that makes a 330 by 330 by 420 V2 if you want.
It does. It does.
That's what I'm in the process of.
It will be. Well, it's going to be a 1.6. My printer went down from the various things that we all dealt with, thermistors and wiring, and ever since I got it running, I can't stop printing these things. So we talked about PLA. I haven't printed PLA in forever. So this is a failed one because I was an idiot. Anyway, it's Deadpool at Max Z, and I have a Thanos sitting on my printer right now.
We need to get Eastman or whatever his actual name is onto a V2.
He likes the prints. I've shared him to him.
Yeah, he's a super cool dude. I freaking love talking to that guy.
Was he the one that made the Thanos and the Deadpool bus?
Yes.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
I would be game to contribute a couple of bucks to get him to do a Raven for us, like a community like show off print.
Yeah. Let's maybe put up something together for him.
I mean,
Kickstarter. Just kidding.
Well, he's on my mini factory, and my mini factory has been pushing the pay for model lately. I don't know what y'all think about that. Like I like the free models myself, but
I like free.
Free is good.
Free
But
is
if
good.
somebody's designing something and it's legit worth money, then I have no problem with them charging. Like, it does take their time to design the model. You can't fault them if they want to charge a few bucks.
Yeah, and like I would, as I said, like getting them to design a Voron Raven, I would totally be fine with collecting money as a community to have kind of something that's a hallmark set piece show off print for us. Like, yes, you can go and download it wherever and print it on your FT7 or whatever the hell you've got, but it's not the same as doing the Voron print on your Voron.
I do know that he does not do commissions.
Okay.
I actually had that conversation with him when it came to my wedding, because I was going to have him I was just going to commission him to design something for me.
Well, then you end up with time constraints, and I can understand that.
Well, he just said, like, straight up, just commissions aren't a thing that he does.
Yeah, it makes sense. Some people don't want to turn their hobby into their job because that turns out wrong a lot of the times.
I wish my camera was good enough to show off this.
It's the wrong color.
Well, it's the only PLA I have.
I know.
Like,
I could tell that was PLA too, because that's
all
just
shiny
as fuck.
And I have very shitty light going. I have really poor light. Oh, great! Now the monetization is gone. I got really poor light.
Oh,
But
it's
this
halfway
I lost the
before,
monetization like an hour ago.
I printed this at this is 245. I think the stock one is 249.
and it's broken.
No.
It's PLA.
This is PLA Pro, yo.
Okay,
PLA Pro.
Yeah,
Nah.
don't hold on to it too tight. Your body heat might melt it.
But I wanted to actually do something with PLA because it does make prints like this just gorgeous. And my ABS one looks great. This one looks better. And it's the irony. I was just thinking about this before I hopped on. I was like, man, my ABS one looks better than what most people show on their PLA ones.
What happened to the top of his head?
Oh, this is my so when I changed my extruder around, and as soon as I got to 240Z, it was hitting my Bowden. The XY joint was hitting my Bowden, and yeah, it screwed up my obviously the top of my Deadpool, which came out amazing until that point, and my retraction settings were wrong.
Yeah, one of these days I actually have to sit down and make a PLA profile for my Voron, because right now any PLA print I do is with my ABS profile with the temps turned down, so it's not, the retracts aren't clean on it.
Yeah, that's kind of it was kind of where I was at with that guy. It was the first thing I printed in PLAs in a long time, like months.
I haven't touched PETG since I built my V1, and I haven't bought PLA since roughly about that time. It's ABS. I got a case of stuff on the way again.
Yeah, you want half your retract at least. At least in my case, I got like 3.3 millimeter instead of 6. Because I'm printing PLA because I don't have my case yet.
Soon though.
Yeah, I just gotta cut the plexiglass, print the door. Having said that, I see your Prusa back there. Why isn't it printing?
I don't always print. I'm not always printing. My V2 is almost always printing, but I got 5 printers in here, 6 printers. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a little slow. I just got done working 13 hours.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, sorry, this is a change of topic. I'm gonna chime in another reminder for everybody that swaps out their tool heads. I already mentioned the dangers of forgetting to move your inductive probe. The other danger to be aware of is to remember to change your thermal settings, because I did not do that when I started this volcano print, and it didn't go well. And I just updated my thermal settings and realized that I was printing at 280.
Ooh.
Oh dear.
So I'm gonna go ahead and restart that one.
I was wanting to get to a couple of the questions that were in the chat. Scrolling back a little ways, someone had asked if you could use a bandsaw. Of course, you can use a bandsaw to cut your extrusions. Bandsaws usually don't cut real straight, perpendicular. You usually have to clean them up with like a sander or something. The best thing is a metal chop saw, if you're going to do it yourself.
Yep. So one thing I will mention, because so Max is kind of paying attention in the background, but he's got family stuff and whatnot. So the new 80 tooth, I don't have one handy printed to show off. If one of you guys do, that would be great. So the 80 tooth pulley. Oh, awesome. If you could snag that. The new 80 tooth pulley. So at the old 80 tooth, and I'm going to jump up to Greg here. All right. So this is the new 80 tooth pulley. So what we've changed, what Max has changed, I'm just announcing it, is that it no longer needs the 40 tooth pulley in the center. It is a 20 tooth pulley as opposed to 40 tooth. So it reduces your cost, and it's one piece that you have to print versus you have to print the ring and then the 2 rims around it to press together. Well, what we've done is reduced it to a single piece that you just put a deflanged 20 tooth in it. So it's cheaper and it's faster to print, and it's still very, very, very solid. I've got a few. I'm actually using one in, you broke it. You broke it, and it's horrible, and it's ruined, and it's all your fault. So I'm using one in actually my V2.1 in the extruder right now. And the nice thing about it is it's actually lighter, so it has less rotational mass, so it's more responsive. You'll be seeing this coming on GitHub and on the website in the coming days. If you're building a printer right now and you've got your 40 tooth pulleys already in hand, the V-locks are perfectly fine. They work well. I'm still using them on all of my Z-axes, so you've got no problems there. However, if you haven't bought your 40 teeth yet and you're building a 2.1, go ahead and just bump up your order of 20 tooth by 5 more, including the extruder. So bump it up by 5 and away you go. It's simpler, it's easier, it reduces the BOM by 1 line, and life is good. So be watching for that. Also, it just looks cool. Like, it looks like those old school, like, well, not old school, but like late 90s racing wheels, like BBS or something. So I'm a fan.
If you get fancy with your filament changes, you can put white walls on it.
Yes, I may be doing that at some point. Allegedly, hypothetically, I can either confirm nor deny such allegations to protect assets that may or may not remain in the field.
Somebody asked in the chat about how is it held on. The screws go through the center of the hub, and they essentially interfere with the plastic and the metal to thread themselves in between the two.
Focus you.
Yeah. So basically self-tap.
Focus you back.
That worked.
There we go. There we go.
Your mic is a bit far from you. I don't know. Just
Yeah,
saying.
that's because it's off to the side here.
Oh, you got a fancy, one of those fancy mic.
Yeah. Well, it's a $14 Amazon XLR mic into a $100 Scarlett Solo. There you go. Now he's got one. The red's a lot easier to see.
I can't really like help with whatever the fuck my camera's doing.
Put your hand up behind it.
Meh. I don't even know what it's doing right now.
There you
There we
go.
go.
Oh yeah. Basically it just self taps itself. Works really well.
It also self-centers too.
Well, even like, so one thing that I was testing when I was doing this particular gear just was I tried to make it kind of offset. It didn't fit perfectly well. I was over extruding a little bit, and it went in really crappy at the beginning. So when I'd spin it on a drill, it'd wobble. And then as I screwed the bolts in, like it just kind of figured its own shit out.
That's what I was saying. When you screw those 5 screws down all the way, it might push back the pulley just a little bit, but it's gonna actually line everything up. And if you always put your pulleys, your 80 tooth on a 5mm shaft and give it a good spin and make sure that thing spins true.
Yeah, I've got one Z that wobbles, but
yeah, it's not just assembling the 80s, but it's all of your pulleys. We've seen a few of them that are off center, and it wasn't even something I thought of until somebody in chat mentioned it. And I've noticed a couple of mine are actually off center too. So I don't know if that's a widespread problem, but check yours before you get them all built in somewhere.
For pulleys, go with Powge, Powge.
Those things are really nice.
They're a little more expensive, but worth it.
They're damn good.
I actually have one of the E3D pulleys, believe it or not. I bought one. I spent money on
You
this.
sucker.
Yeah. Well, I was ordering from Phyllis Truder, and I said, you know what the fuck? And here it is. I have to tell you, the finish on it is quite nice. I mean,
I just love your face in the middle.
Comparing it to the Powge or whatever, I've got some of those as well. The actual functional surfaces and things like that actually matter, there's really no difference. The E3D one
the price is different.
And the E3D one.
Yeah, like I can.
Price.
I mean, that's
I can get
E3D.
3 or 4 Powge E's for one E3D.
Yeah.
Do we ever figure out what the idlers were inside of their tooth idlers?
No,
the bearings themselves.
The final from them was there is no manufacturer spec that is given, and they are to spec.
Yes.
No spec was given.
But they're to spec.
They're to
Quite
spec
honestly,
with no
like,
spec given.
As soon as E3D gave out the whole specs on the bed, and when they addressed my concerns to the bed, I lost all confidence. If you're going to put out a bed that is in the hundreds of watts and you don't have...
Yeah, theirs is big.
All right, it doesn't come with an SSR, so you get to pick and choose yourself. So you being the ANET AA user, you get to buy your cheap $3 SSR from China. And also there's not an appropriate location to mount a temp fuse anywhere.
No.
And their response on the SSR made sense. The person who is buying this bed should know what they're doing. You're correct. But when it comes down to the temp fuse, there's literally no room.
Here's the scenario.
And his money will soon burn his mom's basement down.
Yeah.
Yep. So here's the problem with the thermal fuse. If you don't have a thermal fuse on a bed powered by an SSR, you buy an Omron SSR, it's good. You know, you buy a quality one, your odds of you having an issue are small as hell. You buy that cheap Chinese one though, and it fails. An SSR fails closed I believe. Anyways, if it fails, it'll just keep pumping juice to your bed. Now, you may have thermal runaway protection engaged, which will turn it off, but the problem is the power's coming straight from the mains. Your thermal runaway protection on your ramps board isn't going to do diddly. The power will keep pumping into the bed. You need that thermal fuse. That's why I don't like resettable thermal fuses that pop, and then if the temperature drops, they unpop. I like the ones that blow and they're dead, because that way what happens is if it pops, you know, the temperature rises, it pops, it cools down, but then it goes again, and then it'll keep, you know, fluctuating. I want it dead if my bed overheats because something went wrong, and they're cheap from China.
And that's the other thing, especially with our design. If your bed overheats and you've got that Kenovo or equivalent silicone mat, if it's hit that 130, 140, you've cut the life of that adhesive by orders of magnitude. So all of a sudden you're risking that thermal mat sagging off. So perhaps better like that, and not reading accurately, so that you're going to wind up with setting yourself up for failure and fire.
As soon as you get a bubble under that mat, that's going to be a fire.
Yeah, that's game over. So I would far rather it fail and be dead. So like, you know, I've got a thermal fuse at 130. It hits 130, boom, game over. So like, look, if it hits 130, that 3M adhesive, I know has lost some life, but it's not lost as much life as if it hit 130, reset back to 100, bounce back to 130, lather, rinse, repeat for X many hundreds of, well, not X many hundreds, but X many hours while I'm asleep or at work or whatever. I want it to be dead and die, or die and be dead, so I can come home and be like, well, shit, something broke. I got to fix it. Let's solve the problem and prevent this from happening again. Because I'm not buying a new house because my 3D printer burned my old one down.
Yep.
Thus, in this sermon.
Fuses, you literally just drill and tap an M3 hole to the plate, and they screw right to it, mount it right next to the, not directly touching the pad, but like a millimeter or two away. And they're like $2 or $3 for 5 of them from China. And I can't remember who it is, but somebody here tested them, and they do pop at 130.
Yeah, versus
the other thing too is if you have just a bed that is milled out for 4 holes, just mount one to one of the holes. Like, you don't need to mount out all 4 holes on your bed. You don't need to even tap the bed. Just put an M3 on there.
Yeah, the 2.1, you don't mount to one of the holes, so just bolt your thermal fuse there. And actually, one of the guys, Fulg, on the Discord and on the Reddit. By the way, if Fulg ever weighs in on something, like, stop what you're doing and read what he says, because he sits and he thinks about every single angle and helps to try and make sure you understand it. So if he's weighed in, take that as gospel. Just saying. Dude taught me more on 3D printing than just about anyone else. But so he actually tested the thermal fuses that are in the Kenovo beds if you buy it straight from Kenovo. And he was able to exceed what the published thermal rating was on that thermal fuse multiple times. I don't even know if he was ever able actually to get it to pop. So I would do a separate thermal fuse before I trusted one implanted in the bed. And the other thing is, if you trust the adhesive to stay, like you've got a 120C fuse for whatever reason, you know, you don't have to replace the whole mat if the thermal fuse pops. But just install a thermal fuse somewhere. That's all I'll say.
I mean, here's the biggest thing as far as my consideration to it. So when we're looking at it from a safety and a monetary standpoint, a thermal fuse is a few pennies, or it's even a few dollars. That's nothing. If you buy a good quality SSR, the chances are that you're going to need that fuse to pop is so incredibly low. But if you do need it to pop and it doesn't because you don't have one, and you lose your dog, you lose your wife, you lose your house, whatever it is, you're going to wish that you would have bought a thermal fuse for every single person on the single planet that prints before you would have had that failure.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to ever see a Voron turn into an ANET A8. I mean, those are notorious fire traps. We've all seen the photos of the A8 that has gone high order and burned someone's mom's basement down. We don't ever want to see that. And that's why we err so much on the side of caution. That's why the BOM specs an Omron branded SSR, not, you know, random Cridom. Well, Cridom's actually a legit brand, but not like insert knockoff brand here SSR. It's not why it's a insert knockoff brand here heater mat. We have min-maxed things in the side of safety. So, you know, if we say, hey, you can get away with using FistTech BMG gears, awesome. That probably doesn't matter. But if we say you probably really need to use an Omron SSR, it's because we want to make sure your house doesn't get burned down. There's a reason.
It's that, and then also it's just the point of, like, this is something that can straight up burn your house down. Like, this is also not something new. When you look at home brewing, people have been using Kenevo heaters for ages, and they've ran into similar situations with Omron SSRs and all that sort of stuff.
Another comment on sourcing the SSRs. For whatever reason, I don't understand. SSRs seem to be a product that is frequently counterfeit. So that's also a part that you want to get from a reputable dealer directly. And that also means
Mouser, DigiKey, etc.
Yeah. So, and it's, you know, it seems like an odd, I guess I'm not in the counterfeiting business, but
it's popular to purchase for people who have minimal desire to spend money. So I think a lot of the popularity for the SSRs being counterfeit actually came from the home brewing community, because they'll use the SSRs to heat control their ferments or whatever. And I started looking into that back in 2004.
Yeah.
So it's had a long time to fester.
When you pick up your LRS 200, get an Omron from the same provider. Yep. Simple as that.
So one thing I will say is there have been, and now this is not an endorsement of knockoffs, not an endorsement. There have been a couple of teardowns of knockoffs, and there have been some people who have seen some knockoffs that are basically, it is one power level down from where it should be. So say you buy a 40 amp one, it's really built like a 25 amp one.
Which is more dangerous.
Yes. Now, if you're buying one and, you know, if you buy a 100 amp knockoff, you might be okay. Now, I am not the designer. I am not telling you to buy a 100 amp knockoff SSR versus a however many amp is in the BOM Omron one. I am saying that you are playing your odds there. So if you buy a knockoff Omron 25 amp one and expect it to hold 25 amps, good luck, dude. It's not going to happen. So spend the money, buy the Omron one, because at the same time, going back to the time value of money and what your time is worth, how much time are you going to spend on watching that and worrying about that SSR failing and burning your house down? And here's the thing, it's not going to fail in the first hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. It's going to fail at random ass hour 100 something or other when you've gotten comfortable with it and you're going to come home and, you know, you've got a pile of rubble.
Yep, my printer runs lights out pretty much all the time. I work 8 to 10 hours a day. I sleep, you know, 8 hours if I get that. Yay, infant. So I want my printer to be able to run when I'm not, you know, hovering over it. Some people, you know, you always say to people, I don't print unless I can sit there and babysit my printer. Nobody babysits a CNC machine. Nobody babysits their toaster. Nobody babysits their oven. Nobody babysits their fridge or their furnace in their basement. You can build the reliability into it. You just have to get good components.
I mean, here's the biggest thing, Taylor. If your printer failed while your wife and your infant were asleep and burned up the house, how would you feel? Like, ultimately, like, get that shit just dialed in and protected. It's not worth it. And it's not worth the repercussions of the very minor off chance that something happens. Like, shit happens.
Okay, and on the flip side of on the flip side, I'm looking here in the chat. Like, well, one guy's like, "Well, that's why I have Octoprint. I can check on it remotely." It's even worse.
An
You're
FSR,
like, now you're watching your house burn down.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing: an SSR is going to fail open or closed.
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 Which is very confusing for those who are not as electrically inept or electrically
inclined.
Able. Because that means that it's going to fail open or closed to where it's burning.
When it fails so that power is continued to feed through it. So failed closed means it keeps power running through that heat bed to get it hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. Failed open means it cuts and it's done. And that's why we put the thermal fuse, because when the thermal fuse fails, it opens and it's done and it's over and there's no power being fed to it. Does that make what you were trying to go for, Adam?
Yeah. Basically, it's failing in the worst way possible. And you don't want it to do that. And it's going to result in an electrical fire. And that is specifically to solid state relays. I know that there's more conversation when it comes to SSRs versus MOSFETs when you're talking about the homebrewing community, because MOSFETs will fail closed typically. So you don't run into that same issue, but the fact of the matter is MOSFETs can't handle the voltage flow that is happening with an SSR, which takes away entirely the reason that we're going for a Kenevo bed.
Yeah, and go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, I was just gonna say, for as bad as this sounds, the bed is still only 5 amps. 12 volt, 24 volt beds are pushing what 15 plus amps. So even as scary as we're making it sound, it's still only 5 amps in terms of wiring, in terms of like it is still a safer option than a 12 or 24 volt bed. So I just want to just drop that in there, just while we're on the subject, because we're kind of making it sound like kind of we're making it sound
Overly
worse than
scary.
it is, but we want to drive the point home. You need to use the proper equipment. This is mains voltage still. It is, you know, it can burn your house now. Now, you could go and, you know, I didn't do it because of this, but I don't have a Coroplast bottom plate. I have a aluminum sheet over my electronics base. So even if my Kenevo did fall off, it's still sitting on a metal plate. So it ain't going to catch anything on fire. But I did that just because I wanted somewhere to mount something floating in air, and attaching a power supply to Coroplast doesn't work.
Yeah, and also you were able to bogart that sheet of aluminum from work.
Yes, that too. Working in a tool shop does have its advantages.
You mean
So-
you found that in the scrap bin?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah.
Actually,
allegedly,
I legit did
hypothetically.
find it in the scrap bin.
So
one thing before we get too far is I'm looking at this right now on DigiKey. A legit Omron 25 amp SSR is $32. A cheap 25 amp one on Amazon is $10. So you're gonna spend $20 more for peace of mind. You might as well, if on $1,000 printer, what's $20? You might as well spend that for peace of mind. And are you willing to risk $20 for either your valuables, your pets, or your loved ones? It's not.
I mean, that brings up a really good point. Like,
preach.
There are some people who will say, mainly Ghibli, but there are people that say that the Voron 2 requires like dragon scale and all these other exuberant materials to build. We go for the cheapest parts of all the parts that we can, and then there are the parts that we refuse to go cheap on. So the Kenevo heater, the SSR, the electronics, the things that actually mean a difference between your house burning down potentially and more likely versus a high wind rail. Like, what is the high wind rail going to actually get us? Maybe we will have 0.025 less defects on our prints. Okay,
and
I can deal with that.
And plus 10 e-peen units, because that's why we really all do this, is because it's all an internet dick wagging content.
I need to be able to walk. I'm sorry, I can't handle the high wind rails on there. I need to be able to walk still.
Hey, one of my Chinese knockoff rails did come engraved with high wind, so I do have a totally legit high wind in my V2.
I mean, if it's got the name on it, I'm not going to argue with you because I can't prove you wrong. But
hey, man, it says high wind. It's definitely high wind.
Yeah,
totally.
So many pictures.
You know, and also this is a Canadian, so it may be a different spelling of high, but who knows?
Oh no, sorry. I mean, just on those iWin, I've contacted like Alibaba's, like a bunch of Chinese people in Alibaba about rails, and I kind of fucked up my my request. They have so much iWin branded at many prices. I don't think yours getting me.
Yeah, it comes up all the time. Somebody pops in, not daily, but often enough, asking about, oh, hey, if I use high winds, I've still yet to see somebody actually, be serious and do it. Every V2 uses, CNA rails.
I don't think there's anything to be gained, really. I don't think you'd even see it.
I don't think there's... Go ahead.
That's where there's a lot of posts where people are asking where they can cut corners and where they can splurge. And they usually want to cut corners on the PSU, they want to cut corners on the bed, they want to cut corners on the control unit, and then they want to splurge on something like the rails and the extrusions, or things that aren't going to have a material impact on the quality of the print. Where, like, if you want to splurge, honestly, on a V2, splurge on your bed. Get a really nice tool plate that is ground as flat can be. Get a good heater, get a good SSR, and then outside of that, there's not much else you really need to splurge on. Like, we're trying to drive it down to the cost point as far as we can. Like,
yep.
I mean, if you really wanted to make the V2 as extravagant of a printer as you could probably push it up to about a 4K bomb, but what are those high ones going to get you?
Nothing.
Yep.
And that's the thing. Like, why are you going to spend? What is it? What would a legit high wind cost?
10 times.
80 to 100 each.
Yeah, 10 times.
That's for 80 to 100 each. Now that's for a V2 or a 250 size high wind.
So,
if you go with bigger, it's more.
So let's just say, we need 7 of them. So 700 bones versus the $15 a piece times 7, and I'm not going to math it right now.
For me, it was about $130.
Yeah.
$130 versus
shipping.
$700. So if you want to drop high wind rails, but then you want to buy a knockoff SSR, a random ass Chinese controller board with who knows what MOSFETs, a knockoff heater mat, and not put a thermal fuse on it, this is what we refer to as pound wise and penny foolish. I mean, you are literally spending your money wrong. You're spending your money on stuff that's just name brand bragging crap versus stuff that's going to keep your house from burning down. Why?
So here's the other thing too, is when you're looking at a bed, sure, you can buy a cheapo bed for $30 with heater and everything built into it. Maybe even get some like PEI. And when you look at the actual result of your printer and what is causing you the most frustration, it's going to be your bed. Your bed is going to be the largest point of your frustration because your bed is not level. And when you buy a really shitty bed, well, you're going to have something that's not going to ever level.
You mean be flat?
Oh, yeah, that. I mean,
yeah. The gantry is going to level to the 4 points that you're probing.
Tram to it.
Yeah, it's going to be more than just a potato chip.
Yeah. Is anyone?
It's going to be a friggin' burrito.
Is anyone here's bed actually to the point where they need to run ABL, or is everyone just running straight gantry tramming and that's it? Go. That's how I do it.
ABL, just 4 point.
Okay,
so I run just the straight up just gantry leveling. I think the only person who has tacoed their bed has been Volcom. And show of hands of who is surprised by that. Bueller.
Well,
that is one thing.
All the beds will eventually turn into a slight taco. Like mine's got 0.25 millimeters, which is a single layer of my standard layer height.
I mean, that's substantial.
Yeah,
but
and that's 0.2. It's like it's so tiny. It's hard to see with your naked eye. Like that.
But it's still substantial when you're actually trying to do anything.
It is substantial. Let me ask this though, Jeremiah, what are you running your power at for your bed? Because I mean, like Duet says that you need, what is it? It's 0.4 watts per millimeter squared of the bed. I'm remembering the equation wrong, I'm sure, but
yeah, it's per centimeter squared.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so I have a 600 watt heater that I've ran ever since I put it on this brand new bed at 400 watts, and it's a 250.
And I think mine's at like, I've got the same 600 watt heater that I'm running at like 300 watts.
Yep.
Because of that equation. And so that's the thing. Like, as nice as a mains powered heater is to get up to temperature, the faster those thermal fluctuations are, the more likely you're going to start seeing that flex and that tacoing.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. Everyone's bed will eventually start to move around.
Yes.
Mine gets flat. Mine gets flat, but that's what I was getting at is I didn't get to finish that. I starts off with about 0.2 from corner to corner. And really, if I were to print in the inside 80%, I would never see it. But I've done plenty of testing, and as soon as it gets up to heat, which takes about 10 to 15 minutes, sitting at 90 to 100, depending on what I'm printing that day, it gets level. But that's just something that you gotta think about. The bed might be a consumable. There's some people that have gone to extremes and milled their PEI.
Yep.
And that is an option. You could always grind down the high spots of your PEI manually or some other way. Most of us are running 1 mil thick PI, so there is room to, fudge it a bit. I know I have a slight dip right in the middle of the bed from sanding and other, I think it's also tacoing a bit, so I do have a slight dip in the middle, like 5x5 of the bed, about 0.1 mil, but nothing crazy.
So I'm just going to clarify and say you're saying millimeters.
Yeah, 0.1 millimeter in the middle.
Same here.
Because there's a difference between mil and millimeter.
Yeah, America.
Yeah. If you hear me say mil, I mean millimeter. If I say
I
thou,
understood that. I understood.
For those of us that live with freedom units.
Okay, I have a 0.004 thou drop in the middle of my bed.
Yep.
Which,
And
if you think about that, it's, you know, feck all.
yeah, that's a cunt hair.
So
Bees
for
dick.
folks that are still shopping for parts, you can have Kinovo do custom spec heaters, and so you can get yourself a heater that is the right power to hit that, you know, anywhere between like 0.4 and 0.6, I think, or 0.4 and 0.5 watts per square centimeter. So you can have a custom heater built. If you just buy one of the off-the-shelf ones, it is probably going to be overpowered. And I know everybody loves like more power. I have a 1,000-watt heater; it gets to temperature in 30 seconds. But it's more dangerous. You're introducing more thermal stress, and you're talking about you know, a machine where you want to let the thermal stabilize before you print anyway. So you're already, once you get to temperature, you want to let it sit for a little bit to even out, let all the thermal expansion happen, so that doesn't happen while you're trying to print your first layer and see your you know, see your first layer go all skewy. So getting your bed to temperature in you know, half of a second is not gaining you anything, and in fact it's just making your life harder in the long run. So if you do end up buying an off-the-shelf spec heater that is over that power limit, just when you do your configuration, turn the PWM on that so that it's only running at, you know, 50% or whatever your math works out to, and that will it'll give you a better heating profile, and that extra time that it's taking is just helping to heat up your chamber anyway.
Let me ask this, because this brings up a good question. I know a lot of us run heat soaks. Like, we will not start a print cold. What do you run as your heat soak?
I don't run a heat soak.
You don't?
Nope.
So my start procedure is when I power on, I will do homing and gantry leveling cold, and then I will heat the bed to temperature, and the hot end to a standby temp. I do a standby of 170, and then I wait. I have an extra thermistor inside my chamber. I can actually pull that up on see if my camera's working here. Switch to so you can kind of see right there, this little guy.
Yep.
Right here. So I have an extra thermistor in my chamber, so I can monitor that on the Duet right here. So my chamber is actually at over 50 right now, but I wait until that gets at least over 40, and I kind of try to get it up a little closer to 42, 43. And then once that's done, then I start the print, and my print does a homing with just a simple Z level. And then it prints. And what I found for myself, and I think all of us have different procedures. I found for myself that if I don't give it that time to preheat and do thermal expansion, my first layer will wander. And the other thing is that if I have a print finish and I start another print, my first layer is going to be way off, because now when I start my second print, you know, the machine is at a different temperature. So that's my procedure that I go through personally, and it seems to work for me. So I'm curious to hear, you know, like I said, I gantry level cold, and because for myself, and I have a knockoff inductive probe, it will stop sensing if it gets over about 70 or 80, which was also a problem with having too weak of a heatsink fan, and also with one of the older iterations of the tool head itself didn't promote airflow as well. So with those things changing, the inductive probe can stay a little cooler than it used to. But still, if it gets up over about 70, 80, it will stop triggering for me. And so I just don't run it hot. I just run it cold.
Yeah, that's kind of like how I do mine. I normally would just do a simple XYZ home, and then I'll park the hot end about 5 millimeters above the bed, dead nuts in the center, and I'll preheat the bed to whatever temperature I'm going to print at, usually, ABS 100, 110, whatever, depending on the brand. And then I'll let it sit there for about 10, 15 minutes. Now, I have it configured so my hot end fan kicks on if my bed comes above 40 or 50 C. I can't remember what it is. So that way I'll let it sit there until the bed temperature levels out. I have a probe in the bed itself. I don't just read the Canovos thermistor. I read one directly in the bed near the edge. So I know when the plate has kind of reached a even heating level. It's not, still going up. And then I can also see the hot end temperature. I don't preheat my hot end. It'll naturally heat. Once it hits about 50, 55 C, I'll let it run the whole gantry leveling routine, select the file, start the print, and that leads to pretty much perfect first layers for me. And because the bed's already been at temp when I leveled, I can start a print right after one finishes. Just after heat soak, I don't need to re-level it. I just let the bed come back up to temp. Once the bed stabilizes again, I just hit print again. I don't even re-level.
And I guess I'm kind of an outlier here. So I've got two different machines that are set up slightly differently. So on my 250 rig, I only run an Omron B-stock inductive probe, which, by the way, will only work if you use 24 volts and less than 1 millimeter thick PEI. If you're running 1 millimeter thick PEI, it won't work because it's a 5 millimeter sense distance on steel, and we're working on aluminum. Anyways, so on my 250, my sequence is as follows. I bring my bed and my nozzle both up to printing temperatures. I have my nozzle at 5 millimeters above the bed, dead center. And it is a minimum of 10 minutes before I tell it to start printing. At the start of every single print I do a gantry leveling routine to bring my gantry into compliance with my bed at the start of that print. Now, the thing I've seen and measured with data on the Omron probe is it is within, and I'm not going to say statistically insignificant because I have not actually run all of the statistics and I don't have a p-value for it. But it is within a very, very, very few standard deviation units, cold versus hot, if I leave the heaters engaged. So theoretically, I could tell it to level cold and then run hot, and it should be fine as far as leveling goes. But I tell everything to heat soak for at least 10 minutes. And then honestly, what happens is I tell it to heat soak and I go and get a shower and I go get coffee and I come back and it's probably 30, 45 minutes later. And then I tell it to start printing. So my 320 still has the FSR nozzle probe in it on top of the random Chinese knockoff inductive probe. And so still, once again, I'm doing that with at least a minimum of a 10-minute heat soak. And when I say heat soak, it is nozzle in the center of the bed, nozzle at print temperature, bed at print temperature, and everything heat soaks through before I even start considering running a gantry leveling routine and starting printing. And that's just how I do things. And I know, like with the Omron B-stock probe, I should be able to do it no matter what. But the thing is, even though that Omron probe's readings aren't going to change, that bed, as it heats, can do weird things. So if I do it cold, there's nothing to say that what is cold is going to be the same as what's hot. So that's why I do everything hot.
I mean, I agree. I've also done a lot of testing, or just in my own printing, I just remember what I'm doing. And for me, when I was like soaking and all of that stuff, I'd come up with offsets sometimes that didn't fit into what Duet Web Control would want to do, which is probably more of an issue in my config. I mean, my config's still from, oh God, that's February. So it's out of date, like it's old, but ultimately, like for me, I figured out various patterns that my printer would work through. And for me now, I'll heat up to maybe 60°C if I even heat up at all. And I'll run the gantry leveling. I'll drop it 0.15 millimeters, and then I'll call it good. And I'm just kind of done until the next time that I want to print again. Whereas when I was doing gantry leveling every single time, or anything like that, I'd start off at a -2.5, and then for the first print, second print would be a 1 positive, and then the third print would be like a -0.5. And it was a giant pain in the butt. And I finally realized, oh, well, I could just drop all of this out of my my print code, turn on my printer, run a single gantry leveling, and then just go from there.
And I think that actually brings up a really good point, that 3D printing is still an art, not a science. That like everyone does, even though like we have very, very similar configurations. I mean, even, you know, a Prusa Mark III to a Prusa Mark III to a Prusa Mark III, everyone does things slightly differently to achieve the same results. It is very much an art, not a science. It is not an absolute repeatable, because there's so many variables involved that you can't isolate out.
Yes, and that's you know, when people ask about getting into the hobby, I assume everybody that's here is already sort of involved in 3D printing. But you know, as a what kind of 3D printer should I get for you know, I have this hobby that I want to make stuff for. What kind of 3D printer should I get? It's like, well, it's still really at the point that getting a 3D printer is getting involved in the hobby and wanting to, or being willing to spend the time learning the ins and outs of the hobby itself. It just isn't to the point of like, you buy a 2D printer, right? You buy it, you plug it in, and you hit print. Nobody spends their time as a hobby, you know, optimizing their. We were talking about dot matrix earlier. You know, optimizing the dot pattern, or the little punch wires on their dot matrix printer. That's and I'm sure that is absolutely, there's somebody out there whose hobby that is, and I apologize if I offended you. But if you know, having two-dimensional prints, just, you know, we don't even call it that, but just printing stuff out, printing out documents, that is at this point just a commodity. You don't think about it. And in fact, you know, it's obviously with the whole electronic world, I think even using 2D printers is going away. But still, that's a product that you buy. It's same with a toaster oven. You don't.
I haven't owned one
Mod your
in
toaster
over
oven.
8 years.
Yeah.
Which it's really trying when you run into like a job interview, for example, where you're required to walk in with your resume. It's like I sent to you the document.
Oh, you mean they didn't want you to fax it?
I
Oh, God.
never ran into that.
Oh, God.
I did run into the one that just was like, hey, be sure to walk in with your resume. And I was just like, how am I supposed to do this? I haven't had a printer in 6 years. Like, is this a commonplace?
Like,
Actually, I don't have
the
one either.
only
Shit.
thing my laser printer prints are shipping labels. That's it.
Exactly. You get ship stuff, and you're gonna need a printer.
I wrote those out on a marker, right on the box.
You can,
Well, like,
you can
so-
go to the post office like a peasant, but you
That's
can
what I
buy a
do.
label online.
Like a
yeah, like
peasant.
I do all the shipping stuff because I've got like FedEx and UPS and USPS accounts. So it's like, hey, I need to ship print
And
and
they're all
forward parts.
trained on lithopanes.
What was
But
that?
yeah,
They're all trained on lithopanes. Pretty
Yeah.
much lithopanes.
but in all seriousness, you could just get a cheap laser and put it somewhere. It's never gonna dry out. Since I got my laser printer, I haven't bought any powder or ink, whatever it's called. And it's there when I need it, and it's really not drying out, so it's really just meh.
So the printer that got me through college was the same printer that my dad had from when I remember him owning his own business. And so the printer was purchased in 1990, and I was still using it in 2004.
It was probably like an Okadata or something like that, a dot matrix.
Not in the
It was
90s.
a HP laser jet.
I was gonna say it was HP because those things are solid.
Oh
Yeah, HP's
forever.
HP, Epson, and Okadata, those things are beasts. So I went through pharmacy school, and that's what my
Did you?
doctorate's is in pharmacy. And so our first test number 1, which was 1 month of material, was 400 printed pages. And so I had bought a cheap Brother laser printer. And so I was living with 2 other pharmacy students, and we printed all the material, and we thought that was the material for the entire semester. No, that was test number 1 of 3. That same Brother laser printer is what prints my labels today. And I think I'm on cartridge number 3 for it. So I'm not going to argue too much, but I totally get where, just plain paper printers are totally, esoteric almost these days. But at the same time, you can buy a Brother laser printer for $90 that comes with a cartridge that's good for 2,000 pages.
Yeah,
Oh, man,
but
they're
I mean,
even
when you're
cheaper
looking
now.
at ink prints, then you're looking at like $30, but it's going to last for a lot less. It's a different target consumer.
Yep. No, I agree
So-
with that.
You guys are telling me I'm the only one that takes my text documents, converts them to an SVG, and then converts them to an STL and prints them on my Voron?
No, you're not alone, sir.
I think I got my last job.
I wonder if I can do a shipping label like that.
I'm kidding.
Wonder if it'd
I
work.
didn't get a job for that.
Oh,
I-
Full
That would be
disclosure.
some awesome flair if you
Yeah.
if you literally 3D print your shipping labels.
Well,
Barcode and all.
If you
Oh, mail
3D
a
print
coconut.
look, if
mail
you
a
can
coconut.
3D print your shipping label and like send your PIF part to me for verification, I will give you special like God's only flair for
Something.
having 3D printed your own shipping label to send your PIF parts to me. Like
Now-
you will beat me for PIF.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Totally,
That's a pain.
totally legit.
If
Do it
I
as a
can do
limit pay.
that and then get all of your special scotches, then
Well,
maybe.
Got to be careful with that.
Look,
Who's gonna
now
design
you
the
make
tool
it
edge?
down to my neck of the woods, dude. Look, here's the deal. If you, as someone with a Voron serial number, can make it to my neck of the woods, which is middle of nowhere, Alabama, which you probably have guessed by my accent, and you find me, even if you just send me, if you send me a message on Discord and say, "Hey, I'm in middle of nowhere, Alabama, and I want to drink awesome scotch," and you have a Voron serial number, you have access to my entire liquor cabinet.
Look at
Just
that.
so you know.
Dangerous because I know how to use the internet.
Look, if you can make your way to Auburn, Alabama, more power to you.
Oh,
Send me a message
now we
on
know.
Discord.
Now we know the city.
Look, fine, but see, I know Adam is in the Pacific Northwest, so that's at least a $200 plane ticket
I
Worth
can
it.
drink more than that.
and $100 in a rental car because there is no airport near me other than Atlanta. So you're looking at $100 a rental car plus $200 in flights.
Uber,
Or
cheaper.
Uber.
But
Yeah.
yeah, if you Uber it to me, it's $400. I have done that math.
Let's all Uber at the Doc's house.
And that's middle of nowhere.
I might
But-
know, I might know
Dead
something
serious.
there.
The longer we talk
serious,
about
real
this, the more
talk.
of a challenge this becomes.
Yeah.
No BS.
Challenge
If you can
accepted.
make it, if you ever make it to my neck of the woods and you have a Voron serial number, my door is open to y'all. There is not a person with a serial number I have met that I would not drink a beer with. I'll put it like that.
I mean, if I have full reign on your alcohol, then I could definitely make up for the cost.
Yeah, we've seen the cabinet a bit.
Yeah, I've got a shelf on the shelf maybe with a few bottles. And they're empty, unfortunately. Shit.
I mean, honestly, I'm only interested in the ones where they're like the Norse built fifth holders. The ones that look like they're like Viking inspired. I like those.
You have any cider?
Hell yeah, another guy who likes some cider.
I like
Something
making
along the
cider.
lines of this.
Yes. Oh my god.
What is that?
Wait,
He's pulling out collection now.
if I ended up there, Doc, that would not be sitting on your shelf anymore.
It's escalated pretty
He's like,
fast.
I'm not showing off because I'm going to drink it eventually.
What the fuck?
or this?
Oh, that's a nice one. You
Ooh.
need to speak. Oh, come back, come back.
Oh, you have the whole collection. That's right. You showed that.
Yeah.
picture.
Oh yes, I
Wait,
have the
is everyone
entire
21?
Valhalla series. So Loki, Freya, Odin, and I can't remember the last one
Thor?
because Loki, Thor, Freya, Odin. Yep, Loki, Thor, Freya, and Odin. I have all four of the Valhalla series sitting on my shelf. And that's not even the rarest stuff I have. So if you can make it to my neck of the woods, I can probably pour you something you'll never have had.
I
But-
could probably also justify that trip just on how much I would drink.
Probably so. And you know what? I've got a guest bedroom, so bring it.
Oh, Jesus. Apparently on this website, that whole entire series sold for almost just shy of £1,000.
Really? Only
Yeah.
1,000 pounds?
It hasn't gone up very much.
I mean, this is one of those things where
What's it called? Whiskey auctioneer.
it's a thing for me.
Yep. But look, seriously, if you have a serial number and you're ever in my neck of the woods, which is middle of nowhere, Alabama, send me a message. At the very least, I'm going to take you out for a beer and a burger.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I know this was floated before, but is anyone going to the Midwest Rep Fest or any other meetup?
When is it?
Unfortunately, it's the weekend of the birthday of my firstborn, so I will not be going. It's March 29th.
Sounds like
Yeah.
you're
Whatever
having a
weekend that
lonely
is.
A whole
birthday.
lot more.
No,
Yeah.
that's annual review season for me. That's like that is my busiest travel season.
Yeah, because actually I was planning on going because it is across the border for me, but it's only like a 2-hour drive across the border or 3 hours, so it's actually not too far. It's just the weekend. I know this was floated in the Discord a while back. I just didn't know if anyone else was potentially going. You got to flex the Voron at a public event.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. It's like 5 hours for me, somewhere in Indiana, if I remember right.
It's like right on
Yeah.
the border of Michigan or Indiana. It's
Yeah.
not a place you would think would hold a big festival. Then again,
Yeah, it's
Midwest
where
Rep
Steamy
Fest.
CNC has a headboard.
Yeah. March 29th, Goshen, Indiana.
That's it.
Yeah, that's a no-go for me, most likely. Now, if there's anything over in the southeast, I will like if there's an Atlanta Rep Festival, I'll roll up on that. Hell, I'll roll up on that and I will find Brack and like kidnap his ass for a day. And he will probably thank me for it too.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice for the next maybe one of the ones on the coast or something to a year from now schedule a meetup.
No, I would totally be down for some sort of like it, not the March 29th one, but if there was one in like August or something, if we would say, hey, we're going to get a bunch of Voron owners together, and even if it's in, California or something, Maine or California or insert state here,
Canada?
place that I can try.
No, shipping or flying is too bloody expensive up here, man, and you know it.
No one's gonna go to Canada to go look at some Maker Faire.
Hey, during winter, just come.
But
it's
so
really
here's
cold.
the thing. I'm not going to go to the friggin' Maker Faire because honestly, I'm going to show up and it's going to be a bunch of folks with friggin' Prussias and Prussian knockoffs and other bullshit. I'm not going for the Maker Faire. If you say, hey, look, I've got a bunch of the Voron community at insert event here, I'm going to show up for that because we get along. We get it. If you get it, you get it. And so if I show up, I'm showing up not for the printers and the 3D printed cosplay bullshit and everything else, because I don't care about that. I care about, look, I want to grab a beer with Adam and Andre and Greg and Jeremiah and Taylor. I want to sit down and just bullshit and have fun with people who I have made friends with on the internet. I mean, as sad as it sounds, I want to drink with my internet friends.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I've never wanted to go to a Maker Faire, but I do want to have a whole bunch of Vorons in one place. That'd be kind of cool.
It would totally be cool. It would be totally cool if there was like a backpack version, like something I could put in a Pelican case, a Pelican Voron.
If there was a small
cool.
Voron, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
somebody needs to get on that.
Color Voron.
Because I mean, like we've seen Ether with his 200 by 200 by 200 Voron, but really I want like a 120 by 120 by 120 Voron.
Or smaller even. It would be awesome.
Yeah, I
don't
think
need
it
big.
would be.
Yeah, I don't need big.
That's what she said.
That's what she told me too.
See, the problem though is with a Voron festival, it'd be like a bunch of guys showing up with their Mustangs who are all bought the exact same year, make and model Mustang, because our printers all look damn good, but they all look the same. Unfortunately, we just have different colors.
When you got a whole bunch of Mustangs in one spot, that's a beautiful thing.
Mine is different. Mine is special.
I would not say Mustang. I would say it would be showing up with a Ferraris.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I do have a giraffe.
It's freaking yellow. I just realized that.
Huh?
It's a tall yellow printer.
No, my highlights are yellow.
Yeah, it's a giraffe.
No, it's giraffe.
That's why we've been
because
calling
it's
it
tall.
that.
Yellow and black.
No, because it's tall. Damn Frenchie.
PSA, the giraffe is near extinction.
Oh,
Please don't kill the
Jesus fucking
giraffe.
Christ. It might lay eggs.
Well, I got that one.
Oh, snap.
Haven't seen my egg in a while, though.
Andre and his eggs. I just can't even.
I'm sitting here just like scrolling back through various chats and everything, just trying to figure out like where I want to start, or not start, like resume talking shit.
Right? We're talking about booze and baby Vorons.
Oh, well, so there's Matt Baker who wants to talk about the Voron Designs.
Yeah, I was gonna stay off of that one.
Yeah.
I was not going to touch that third rail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, for me personally, there are cost considerations that go into my own choices in life, and the considerations that were made, I would not make myself.
Good enough.
So, yeah, I have nothing more to add other than the decisions he made were not decisions I would have made. It works, and good on him. And so that will work for a V1, V1.5 serial. Now, if you are going for a V2 or a V2.1 or anything else, there are certain standards that have to be met, and that will not meet them. And this is just the nature of the beast, because you can get away with a lot of... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just not going to work on the V2.
No,
Like,
you will...
You just legitimately can't do that.
It will fail, and fail miserably.
Yep, it comes up quite often. Oh, can I, do my V2 and XYZ and extrusion here, 30, 30, 40, 40, blah, 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 blah. You're redesigning the entire printer to make it compatible. Everything is spaced out, the belting, the way the gantry moves, the offsets, the way everything's mounted. You change it from 2020, it just don't work. You're making a new printer.
The V1 and the V1.5 or the V1.6, like they're made with consideration of a lot of aspects. When you're looking at the V2 is a very constrained printer, and that's where a lot of shade has been thrown to the V2. Is just that, like, it's a very closed build. It's a very closed build because there are a lot of choices that were made for the build, and the I can't think of the word right now, but the choice that was made with a reason.
So part of that, to answer a question that came up earlier in the chat about the instructions, actually. So talking about the Voron 1, Voron 2. I always just call them Voron 1, Voron 2. It's just the latest versions, like 1.6 and 2.1. The Voron 1 has like probably half as many parts in it as compared to the Voron 2. So the instruction manual seems like it's a lot better. It was also made, over a year and a half ago now. And the manual on the Voron 2 has all the parts in it. And as we mentioned before, no one's making money doing this. We're doing this out of love and whatnot. And the manual for the Voron 2, I think, looks pretty good. But if the community wanted to help, all they would have to do is submit a PR with at the Voron GitHub with what they would like to help out with. And if we deemed it, I say we, the Voron design community deemed it good enough to go into the manual, it'd probably end up with the manual, because we don't have time to make everything flashy and pretty, at least not in the manual. I just wanted to touch on that. I just remembered there was someone that was asking about the manual.
I mean, for me, like I built the 2.0 without a manual.
I think most of us did.
Yep.
I built 2.1 without a manual. Yeah, of course, that's most of us, but I think there are some people that are having difficulty with the manual.
And if you have a question, just pop in the Discord and ask. Somebody will
Yeah,
help.
if we need a clarity point, we're not going to know what we need until you tell us.
Yeah. And just saying, hey, the manual is crap here, please fix. Well, if you have the ability to do so, like I said, do a pull request. If you don't know how to do a pull request, you can hit me up on Discord in a direct message and send it my way, and I'll review it, and then I'll show it to the rest of the guys. And if everyone goes, oh yeah, that's much better, let's go ahead and use that, you'll probably see it in the next time you see an update on GitHub.
Yeah, and you got to understand that it's still relatively new. I'm sure within the next year, somebody will take the time to make a actual assembly video of the V1 and the V2. It's the V2. There's still only one in the wild, or one in existence, and that's in Mr. Cat Food's lab. So we already found one issue with the manual, and that's being corrected soon. So just give it time.
Yeah, it's a project designed by people, and it's a team of very dedicated, very enthusiastic people, but we still miss things. So there may be things you find as you follow the manual that may be wrong, and the manual's written though not just for the lowest common denominator. It's written for someone who, to be very honest, is capable of building a 3D printer. We're talking about a piece of equipment that has micron level precision. So if you're able to build a 3D printer and follow a manual and then find something in the manual that's wrong, it should be understood to a certain degree that you probably can address the issues that may be in the manual, because it's one guy designing the manual at the end of the day.
I mean, there's proofreading on it, but ultimately, yeah, you're right.
So
So I just want to
Alright.
make sure we did touch on that.
So yeah, there's one thing I want to touch on that I'm sitting here debating on if we should touch on it right now or no. So
Just do it.
All
The
right.
steps.
Just rip it off.
All right, I'm gonna rip off the Band-Aid. So I'm gonna be the one who is the face and the persona of this, but it's something that Max and I, Russian Cat Food, have talked about in depth and quite a bit. And so this is something the community has asked a bunch about. When are we getting the step files? All right,
Oh my God.
I'm gonna pause here for let everyone else to rabble. Get it out of your system. Go ahead. I'll wait.
Rabble.
Rabble.
Germs!
I will say, from my standpoint, you need to experience Voron or the designed files as what they are before you decide that you need to modify them. This is coming from someone who has had printers that just mandatorily, if I didn't modify this printer, it was going to be a piece of garbage. This also walks into the same viewpoint that a lot of people have when it comes to asking for step files. A lot of people feel that we need to provide the step files so they can modify them. And I think that this is where what Doc has to say is really going to, I guess, mean something. I don't know.
So I will take that as my segue. So this is something that Max and I have talked about a whole lot, because as a background, my day job, I'm a consultant. So it's my job to help people figure out how best to say what they want to say. And so I've been talking with Max a long time about how do we frame what the ethos behind the Voron design community and project is. And at the end of the day, it comes down to Voron was built and designed originally as MZBot. And MZBot was intended to be a company, a commercial product. And as things have progressed, we've pushed it to the community. So we've gone from MZBot to Voron Design, which is going from one man heading the ship to a community-driven project. But at the same time, we still view this not just as something we're going to foist on the community and be like, you're on your own. Here's the stuff and do it, whatever. So we've designed and worked on this project as if it was our life's work. This is our project. This is our community. This is our company. This is our name. This is our product. And that's how we focused on this. And so we've released everything where we really feel when it's an official release that it is a final product, that it is ready to go. So like the 2.0 that was released to GitHub and never was a manual, and the only things you saw about it were videos from people like me and people like Adam and everyone else, where it was just kind of phoned in, where you figured out how to build a 2.0 on photos and videos and your own just intuition. You built it based on your knowledge. That is not what we wanted. So 2.1 really is the design goal of the 2 series Voron. And the 1.6 and 1.5 and the 1 series that have the manuals, those are the design goals. We're handling this as if it was a commercial product. And so we go back and we look at the things that were really what inspired this entire development series. We look at what really brought this all about. And what really brought this all about was Ultimaker. Ultimaker with their 2 and Ultimaker 3 were really what inspired this. The Ultimaker 3, and Max will tell the story far better than I do because I'm stealing words from him. The Ultimaker 3, he saw that. Actually, the Ultimaker 2 before that. The Ultimaker 2 and the Ultimaker 3 were what inspired him to design his own 3D printer. And those were his baselines. His goal when he started this whole project was to design and build a printer that would be as good as, if not better than Ultimaker for far less the cost. And do something that was able to be easily accessible by the community itself. And that's what led to the Voron 1. And then the Voron 1.5. And then the Voron 2. And the 2.1, which is now the release. And so people ask about, when are the files coming about? And this is something that, as I've said, Max and I have talked about. And Max and I have gone back and forth on. So when are the step files coming about? And I'm going to get to that. So the step files really, if you think about it, the people who really want the files to modify the design to use for their own purposes, Those are the 10% of the 90 and 100% of the entire community. So the people who really want the files to modify for their own use are the edge case users. So the people we really want to reach with the Voron project and the Voron design community are those who are willing to build and willing to work and willing and wanting to have a design that builds and works, and it works and it's done. It's, you put it all together, you tweak it slightly, and you're good. That's what the Voron design is really about. That's what this whole project is around. So the files are for that last 10%, if not smaller than 10%. So the focus isn't about those files. We want the community to build and be established before we start sharing everything. And so we've really looked at things, and we've looked back at how the community handles things and how projects that have been previously established work. And I'm stealing words from Max here, by the way. I'm speaking kind of for Max in this, and he will speak to it more in more depth at a different time. But we looked back at Ultimaker. And Ultimaker, their decision on the Ultimaker 3 to really hold back and release the Ultimaker 3 and get it right and get it in front of the community, but not put the files in front of the community until the community's had a chance to adopt the machine and work with it. And Ultimaker's had a chance to take the community's feedback and work with that feedback and adapt and adopt and build the machine that really, at the end of the day, is the ideal of the Ultimaker paradigm. So Ultimaker, with the Ultimaker 3, released the files a year after their commercial release of the machine. And so that, honestly, looking at Ultimaker as the inspiration of the Voron project, the Voron design, MZBot as a whole, we looked at that and we looked at everything they've done and everything else that everyone else in the commercial industry has done. And we circle back to, we think that Ultimaker had the right idea there, that they really wanted to get it out there and get it so that people were using it and focusing on using it and focusing on what could we do better and focusing on iterating and perfecting that design. So honestly, we've stolen a page from Ultimaker's playbook. And so the goal, and here is the answer. If you are asking, when are the step files coming? When will we get the step files? When we get the assembly files? When will we get the files that we can modify to do whatever the hell we want to do with it? I want to adopt these files to put a Mobius whatever on a Prusa. It will be 1 year from the date of official release of the file that will be released for assembly and modification. So step files, assembly files, Fusion 360 files, Inventor files, whatever the program that Max chooses to use to design all of this and push it out, it will be a year from the date of official release that those files will become available to the community for modification, adaptation, and whatnot. If you choose between now and then to take the STL files and adapt them for your own use, that's on you, so long as you use them according to the license they're released under, which I honestly don't know what version of GPL, et cetera, they're under. Someone will correct me here shortly, I'm sure. But those files, the actual root step files, will be a year from official release. Official release, what does that define? That is if you see it on vorondesign.com and that file is up there, the date that that file is published, 365 days from then, that's when you can start looking for the step and root files for your alteration then. Now, this is because we want to work with the community to adapt these files and design them and perfect them. So now, I'm not saying that it's a year from an individual piece's release. So we tweak the XY joint, and because of whatever reasons, it is not a year from that XY joint tweak. It is a year from when that project was released. So working with the community still and looking at the STLs and bringing suggestions forward is still encouraged, because that year clock is still running. But if you're wanting to have these files, if you're wanting to say, take the Mobius 2 and adapt it to your Hypercube, and I'm just pulling names out of the air. I am not singling out Hypercube as a negative example. I'm just saying, insert name here. Actually, let's say this. I'm going to put a Mobius on my printer bot. So if you're wanting to adapt those files to that particular instance, it's going to be a year from the date of release of that file to when you get the step files that you can tweak and tune and whatever you want to adapt to whatever printer you want. Now, if you can work with STLs, good on you. You're already a game ahead. But that is our purpose, and that is our philosophy, that we want to work with the community to design and iterate and perfect this design before we really call it good to release for full modifications and open source. We believe in the open source project. We stand on the shoulders of giants. That is what has brought us to this point. But at the same time, we realize that this is a human-driven project, and that's how we go.
Okay, go have a drink now.
Amen.
So yeah, long story short, no steps for a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, here's the thing. Like, especially coming from my own viewpoint, just try it out. Like, seriously, try it out before you decide that you need to modify it. There are a lot of very intelligent design decisions that were made. So try them out before you actually feel like you need to modify them.
And if you do have a concern, you think something's wrong or could be improved, bring it up. One of the reasons the steps aren't being released is trying to prevent like a fracturing of the design, kind of like what happened with HBot and Hevo, Devo, Sevo, Bebo, whatever. You have revisions, like you can kind of see this with the Voron 1 and 1.5. They're mods for those that don't work with other revisions of the printer. So what we're worried about is essentially V2 came out, the steps came out, say they did. People start making mods for the V2. Well, now there's 2.1. What's compatible? And then, well, somebody took their mods and adapted V2.1 stuff into the mod instead of basing it off of 2.1. And now 2.2 comes out, and then 2.3, or maybe it stops at 2.2. Maybe it stops at 2.1. We're trying to prevent like the printer from fracturing into little niches before everything's kind of essentially locked in, because you need hours on the printer to find out what's wrong with it. Look at Cat 5 gate. It took, a few hundred hours on the printer before we realized that was an issue. We had to fix it. What if 6 months from now we're realizing, okay, you know what? We need to tweak the XY joints a bit because they fail at 10,000 hours for some reason. So now we tweak it, but somebody went and modded it for some reason. Do you know if that mod's going to be fully supported or not? Yeah. So it keeps it homogeneous and updates current until it's at a point where you're pretty good.
Personally, I'm very partial to like homogeneous and very focused development onto a singular thread versus what happens a lot with everything else that's out there. Like you look at a Maker Select V2, you look at a Hypercube, it's just mods everywhere. And it's very difficult to discern what are the pieces of crap and what are actually legitimate. Or even like the FT5, for example, although everything related to that is just garbage.
Save your money, get something else.
Or FT6, seriously, save your money.
So that should kind of end that debate for the people that are watching this. Print the printer as it was intended and go from there. That's long story short.
Yep, and even then,
Honestly,
the only
if you
things that
have
really come up, camera mount, people wanting to mount the Mobius onto other printers, which you could print and make an adapter. Wouldn't be that hard. And then people who want to slap a Chimera or some random Chinese 8 nozzle hot end into it. Other than that, there's been no, anything else I've seen people want to mod, really.
I mean, honestly, legitimately, if you build a printer and you find that it is lacking and you have mods that you feel like need to happen, like straight up just hit up the moderation community on Voron Design Discord. Like we're not against having some input. It just needs to be input with reason.
And yeah, and don't come in. How can I say that without sounding really bad?
It's really input within reason. Like have a legitimate reason and a legitimate spelled out aspect to it. Like if you come to us and say, well, I really want to have 2 filaments, okay, that's really nice that you really want to have 2 filaments. Cool.
I'm trying to say
and say, hey, here are some design aspects that are absolutely failing for me and these need to be fixed. That's a different story.
Yeah, try to bring ideas how to fix the issues. No, don't just come in and it's like, this is shit. And that's it. Like nobody gonna listen to somebody that come in and say this is shit. But best you can do is break apart, and you're surely gonna see a revision soon. Just ask Volcom.
You need to be as specific as you can be. Like coming in and saying I hate this isn't gonna do you any good. Like just give us some actual information rather than hypothetical bullcrap.
Somebody brought up in the chat here wanting to mount a different front panel display, Octoprint Touch UI. Max is saying wait for 2.2 generic mechanism. So I'm thinking he's designing a kind of like a generic mount that you could put, because I know a lot of people don't even run a front panel display, especially with Octoprint.
Wait, people run
people use their
front
phones.
panel?
Maybe just like a phone holder, or I don't know what he has in mind, but it could just be a generic mount.
So, speaking like you're talking about the camera, like that's probably been that's probably been the most. I've seen more people ask about camera mounts and where to do with cameras and whatnot than probably any other question. Even the 4Z or the 4-stepper Z, and it's ironic because the very vision that Russian cat food had was to use the most amount of space most efficiently, or the least amount of space most efficiently to outdo basically everyone as far as actual printer size versus build volume size. And we kind of attained that, and it's real hard to put a camera in there now because there's no room.
A camera that moves.
Yeah.
Because
You
you
definitely-
can slap a printer or a camera. I know, like I have one angled off the top extrusion, sticking out 6 inches off the front of the printer, and it aims down. But the best solution I've seen so far is ether walkers, but that involves a Raspberry Pi Zero, running a power line to it, and the Raspberry Pi camera itself mounted on the extrusion, running its own Octoprint. So it's not bound to the printer itself. It's its own like standalone thing, so you can monitor it, but you're not going to get a Pi Zero wireless. Yes, so you're going to get you're going to have to, you can't get the fancy Octoprint and time lapses that you can post on Reddit for Karma, because it's not talking to the printer at all.
Oh, but you could, like, you don't need Octoprint at all.
Yeah, but you got to use OctoLapse so the tool head moves, and wastes 10 seconds every layer.
Oh, if you're crazy, you could have them both talking. Yeah, I got you. Because you could have the standalone webcam thing you just stream to your other Pi.
And I think that's what Ether's doing with his Pi Zeros. Is it RTMP stream or something like that?
It's probably MJPEG.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what he had on it, but it is separate. But yeah, that involves, and it's not a great camera. You're not getting 1080p, 60 frames per second on that thing.
I believe he said he's doing like 30 frames a second at 1080p.
Oh, nice.
Which is better than my C310.
Yeah, I'm running a C270, and yeah.
I think this 310 and the 270 are pretty much the same camera for the most part. I gotta step out for a minute. I will be right back.
There we go. We did it. We did it. And Canada took over. Meanwhile,
I would say one thing that would be good for us to, I guess, talk about would be what do you use your Voron for? So along the Voron subreddit, there are people who want to have a review. They want to know what people use their Vorons for. Also, why they don't post pictures of their awesome prints on the subreddit, because that's apparently suspicious. So I don't know, like other than Uber Nero, like you post across all the other subreddits, discords, and everything. Maybe Andre, Law Module, or anyone else. What do you use your Voron for?
I'm gonna say the meme answer, and I use my Voron to print Vorons.
I said
and Voron accessories.
Excluding you. We know what you use it for because you're
and I print
very well known across everything.
I also print the odd thing to post to Reddit for Karma when my printer is not printing.
We know who you are.
Yeah, so like if you haven't figured out that the only thing I print are Voron parts, well, welcome to tonight, and here's your epiphany. I only print Voron parts. So if you have parts from Print It Forward up until recently, you probably got them from me if you're in the United States, and maybe even in the EU. So that's literally all I print.
Yep, I've been doing Canada. I'm up to 10 Voron prints so far, so that's 700 hours of just printing Voron parts, roughly. One day I will print that Iron Man helmet, but not today because I'm printing Voron parts.
I print I printed my Voron 2 on my 1.5, so I also print Voron parts, I guess. But I have printed semi-functional parts, both of my own design and other designs. I printed a Focus ST airbox snorkel for a friend's Focus out of ABS. That was a 38-hour print. That was really fun. I printed a it's an open bullet loader for manual progressive reloading press for reloading ammunition. I printed that for a friend of my dad's. That I printed out of PLA just to make it like easier at the time. But I have also printed just some other bits and bobs, a couple of things for some friends, little trinkets and stuff, but it's mainly just a little bit of Voron, a little bit of parts, and a little bit of fancy things, you know. The typical things you see on the subreddit.
It'll, like, for me, my printer PIF has pretty much absorbed it, but I am in the process of getting a second V2 online. It'll be my V1 converted. At that point, my original V2 26 is going to be completely relegated to PIF. It's going to go, and that's all it's going to do. And I'll actually have my own quote unquote Voron to print personal stuff with. At that point, I've been meaning to actually do like a full, I want to be that guy who has a full printed Iron Man set. I have the files for it. I've got friends who want, you know, Star Wars blasters, busts, that kind of thing. So I'll probably get in, like, the original plan was to get into cosplay, and printing props and stuff from movies, because I like just having shelves of stuff, and stuff is expensive. So I'd figure I'd make it myself. I used to be into Warhammer. I like painting stuff. So it was to get into that. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but the actual printer itself as the hobby became the hobby. So yeah.
What's really amusing for me is I don't want to fill stuff on my shelves. I very much like my shelves to not have movie props or anything like that. But what is super enjoyable for me is just building something with a purpose. That has been largely what I've been using my printers for since I got into printing. Is there a purpose? And, or like, my wife will reach out to me and she'll be like, hey, I would really like my phone charger to not fall onto the floor. It's like, oh, okay, I can find something to do that.
Yeah, I did that for a friend of mine. He lives in Florida, and he's got a cabinet in his kitchen that's a corner cabinet with a like Lazy Susan style door, so you can get to the inside. And it's got like a weird latching piece that was just like it was actually injection molded ABS that had a V notch in it, and it was clamped to the shaft. So as the door opened, that thing would ride around and hit a pin, and the pin would fall into that V notch, and the door would stay there. And he's like, "This is broken. Can you print one?" I was like, "Well, I'll have to design it, and I'm not very good at CAD. Like some of the guys in the group and Max and them, they're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna whip up something for the V2 real quick," and I'm like, dude, it would take me a week to do that. But I got it and I printed it. I shipped it to him in a flat rate box. He installed it, and the next day he had a, day after he got it, sent me a video of it, and it works perfect. So it's like, that was really cool. So I have printed some actual proper functional things. So it is fun to do that.
So I kind of wanted to shift a little bit, and this is something that I don't think really, I haven't seen really brought up in the general community, and that is actually the Voron community that we have. So you look at the Hypercube, you look at the D-Bot, you look at pretty much any of the other RepRap style printers that are out there that you can use off-the-shelf parts with some printed parts to make a printer, and that is, we actually have a real community. We have a Discord that's very active. We have moderators, people that have been doing this full time, or not full time. Let me rephrase that. People have been doing this for a while. We've labeled them the regulars that are there to help everybody, to try to get over the hurdles of learning stuff like installing your electronics, installing some of the sensors that seem complicated at first until you start to learn how the stuff all works together. And we've.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, we've also developed a few things that aren't necessary, but are nice things to have, like the Hall end stop board. That's something that you have to do on your own, or maybe if at the time there's a member in the community that has a couple extra end stop boards that can send out your way. There's always new things around the corner that the Voron community is making. And I think that's one of the things that you're kind of getting into when you build a Voron is you become a part of the community. Not everyone stays, but for the most part, we have a really good community, and we do a really good job of moderating it. By moderating, I mean try to keep the toxic talk out of the community. Whenever it happens, and it does happen occasionally, it gets dealt with. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
I would say that when we're talking from a community standpoint, the Voron community is very different. I moderated the 3D printing Discord for 2 years or whatever it is, and then I stepped down because I don't have patience for that shit. And the Voron community is very different. There's a very different type of person who is interested in becoming a contributing member of the community. A lot of them are more technical than me by a very long shot. And everyone is very much kind of wanting to focus on the same goals, just to better the project. And it's really refreshing.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. Before I built my V1.25-ish thing that really got me into this, which was a V1.5 hybrid thing in PETG, that, I had a printer pot that I was like, hey, I want something bigger. Because we all want a bigger printer when you've got like 100 and 100 and 100 something or other build space. It's just natural, right? So, I looked at a console, I looked at Dbot, and I looked at insert printer here. And this is actually before Hypercube was even really a thing. And, just the sheer fact that the Voron community had a sidebar where there was a lineage where, hey, there is this serial number and this serial number and this serial number, where I can see where every person has done a certain thing. I don't know of another community that really has that. And so even while we encourage certain things, there are still design choices that people make that you can stand on the shoulders of giants, to once again steal a phrase that I used earlier. Like, I can go back and look and I can say, hey, look, V2.007 used this color scheme, and I think it looks really good, so I want to emulate that. Or versus V275 and V276, I'm not a huge fan of, so I'm going to ignore those because I want to do something different. Or these printers use Duet, and he was cool with it, and he adapted to it, versus this person used Clipper. I can adapt versus based on what the community has done, and I have a very clear delineation of our heritage. Now, I am sure there are Vorons built and in the wild that don't have serials assigned to them. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. But at the same time, I can go back and I can look. There's over 100 V1s at this point. And there's 91 because I assigned number 91 today. There's 91 V2s in the wild that have serial numbers. So, you have something to go back and reference. I haven't seen that anywhere else. I really haven't. And if that is out there somewhere else, point me where I'm wrong, because I will be more than happy to eat crow there.
I think you'd have to eat some raven.
I mean, I guess husky with coffee brings up a good point. Is a orange Voron the best Voron?
Nah.
No.
I mean, really, it all comes down to just making a Voron. It's the best Voron.
And everyone knows it's all black.
Yep.
Murdered
out, no?
Voron. Murdered out.
To quote the Rolling Stones,
5% tint, you ain't rolling.
yeah, I'm going to steal a line from the Rolling Stones. I see a Voron and I want to paint it black.
There you go.
Although, to be fair, there's actually not a lot of pure black Vorons. They all have accent colors. At least most of them.
This is true.
Like I plan going pure black for my second V2, but that's just because I just don't want to swap colors anymore. I'm too lazy.
I mean, when we're talking about colors, the most shocking point for me has been when RCF posted a picture of some stuff printed in ABS Plus in red.
Oh God, ABS Plus.
It's orange.
Abomination.
I don't know. RCF posted it.
I know he posted it, and dear Jesus, those are horrible. Like
I like it. I honestly do.
You like the orange red?
I'm not a
Look at his headphone.
an entire respectable person all the time.
I hate
Fanta Black partnership.
ABS Plus red, just because like I was promised red, and this is not friggin' red. This is bullshit.
It's as bad as the Amazon Basic red.
Husky.
No, Amazon Basic is worse. But that is just, like, so I have got a couple of batches of printed forward parts done in ABS Plus red. I will not use it going forward because I've got a couple of spools of Paramount Enzo red in hand.
Oh God. I love that Enzo red is so sexy.
Oh my God. Enzo red is the way to fly. Like my 250 2.1 is done in Silver Dollar from Paramount and Enzo red from Paramount. And honestly, that is the only way I think that silver extrusions could really look good. But I'm biased, so.
The Enzo red is probably my second favorite because I do very much like the black cherry red from Atomic that I have on my 2.1. But they're really close. That Enzo, it almost made me second guess reprinting all of my accent parts in that Enzo red when I saw it. It's just
Paramount is just incredible.
Yeah,
You
I don't know how
Americans and
they
your
do it.
Paramount and Atomic.
Every single color they come out with it is just it's so good, and it's so accurate, and it's the biggest part for me is it's so consistent
From spool to spool, from batch to batch. Yes.
Yeah, Paramount's treated me really, really well.
I love Atomic as far as from a U.S. supplier. I love them. Their product is incredible. They make great filament, but it's not entirely consistent. Whereas all of the Paramount that I've ever purchased has been like basically a flat line, which is a good thing.
Do they make a British racing green?
Is it what?
Paramount.
Yeah.
Paramount does have a British Racing Green
I
that
need
is
that.
absolutely gorgeous.
I need that.
Own British Racing Green, 3435C. Yeah.
That British Racing Green is awesome. I don't even like green.
Yeah,
Into
BRG
US.
Paramount is friggin' awesome. I'll dig up some parts some other time and I'll post them in G-Chat. Actually, here, one sec. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Because I actually
from Canada.
Really soon. I remember you posting a few pictures here recently that had the BRG.
Yeah, if you bounce to gallery on the Discord, where I was posting parts earlier today, so there are some parts that are British Racing Green, silver, and then blue. And part of the reason I did that, because those are the colors of my old alma mater. So, yeah, if you scroll to on the Discord, 10:45 my time, and if any of you guys can like link that photo, because I'm on my laptop and it's retarded. So if you can show that photo here,
this is nice.
Yeah,
I
posted the link. I don't know if my link's gonna work.
Andre, Paramount doesn't ship to Canada.
Boo, yeah.
They have some on Amazon. It's $75 a roll.
Hey, look.
Yeah. See our buying option.
If you Canadians can get together enough people in enough close enough area, I will work to get a case or few up to y'all.
Well, to be fair, I technically could be in the U.S. within 30 minutes, depending on traffic and the border. But then I'm in Detroit, so it's kind of like a lose-lose.
They ship to U.S. They ship to Canada.
You shut up
for $50.
Canadian man.
So you got to buy a lot.
So Taylor, you're saying you don't stop believing?
Technically, I do live in South Detroit, so
you do live in South Detroit. That is one of those things that you pointed out a couple of months ago that I never knew, and like has become a cornerstone of my pointing out that, by the way, you are wrong.
Yeah, born and raised in South Detroit. Detroit is on a river. South Detroit is in Canada. It's Windsor, Ontario, technically. And I've actually been down to your neck of the woods, Coleman, Alabama area, and I've had people yell at me because I don't sound like a Canadian because they expect the South Park flappy head accent, and I tell them I live south of Detroit. What do you expect? Like,
how do I sound?
Well,
French Canadian.
So our
poutine baguette, pamplemousse.
Our two Canadian guys.
Baguette.
Baguette de fromage.
I was gonna say our two Canadian guys here that are speaking French. They're the ones that aren't showing a video because they don't want this. They don't want to show their heads flapping around.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, buddy. Hey, friend.
Maybe we don't have proper video setup.
Like I have let me see here. It's a Logitech Right Light Technology webcam that does 320p.
Man, I'm gonna ship you one if needed.
No, then I'd put it on my Voron.
Oh crap! I got so many cameras.
My next webcam purchase is going on my other Voron.
See, I used to buy camera equipment and shit before going into 3D printer, and it's as an addiction as much as the printer is now.
Andre, I know that you have a 920.
A 920? Yeah, I know.
He's got one of them. He's got a couple of them cool cameras from China.
Oh, I got all the crazy crap. I got like fake GoPros. I got a Mija security home camera. I could even set up my 5D2 over USB. I got like custom firmware on it. I've used that in the past. It's kind of funky.
You got the equipment. You could be the next Ponorkel.
Yeah, but I just don't have the place. That's the problem.
Okay, I plugged in the camera. I don't know if it's showing up.
Ew. No, it's just great.
Yeah.
You can do it. I think you gotta like approve it or something.
You gotta click on the little camera button.
It's saying it's on. That's how good the Canada internet is.
Windows 10. So yeah, you can get Paramount on eBay for $40 US shipping. So I guess if you buy a shit ton, it's worth it.
That's like double the price it is here in the U.S.
But the thing the Canadians got that we don't.
Shipping. It's just shipping.
You Canadians got that filament.ca or something like that. We can't get that stuff down here. That stuff's gorgeous.
Yeah, I haven't bought any of that.
And the prices, your prices on that stuff are ridiculous.
They kind of feel.
I can't remember. I remember you were the one that were showing it off a couple months back.
Wasn't it Folge? Because yeah, they got like the Econo refill. It's just the filament, no spool. It looks cheap, but with shipping, it's not that cheap. I prefer the iPrint 3D stuff.
Or maybe it's iPrint 3D. I just know it was in Canada.
iPrint 3D is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
I mean, it works. But having not touched eSun until like yesterday, wow, this is so much better.
So eSun prints really well, but dear God, they cannot match a color to save their friggin' life. Like even their black is like, so this is kind of sort of maybe black. We're gonna call it black, and we'll go with it because it prints so well.
It's black.
It's close enough to black.
I don't know. My 3 spool of black are black.
It's good enough. It's like a matte-ish black.
Yeah,
but you know what? It prints like butter. Everything's awesome with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, like you can totally bullshit the settings with ABS Plus and be good.
It's kind of wrapped too if you don't have a door on your printer.
Well, someone needs to put a door on their printer.
Mm-hmm. I don't know who.
Oh, I printed with the murder plastic for the longest time on my V1.
Dude, I had the totally bogarted friggin' Coroplast box over my V1 that was like, ugly as hell. Yeah, pretty much exactly like that.
Cooking in there.
That monstrosity is what printed that V2. So it's ugly as all get out, but it fucking works.
I miss my Stuvo box from IKEA.
Yeah, I broke one of mine. I touched it a little hard.
Yeah, the cardboard wall.
Yeah, I got the.
It's so weak.
What the heck are those stupid things that everyone put their Pruses in? Even me.
Stuva?
Is it? No, it was they're the $7 ones.
Lax. Yeah, the Lax.
Yeah. The Lax.
Yeah.
They make a larger version of that actually now.
I don't know how it can handle its own weight. It's literally cardboard.
Oh yeah, we can see it in the back.
Yeah, it weighs nothing.
Yeah, they are just special.
You can print support for that thing, by the way, on Thingiverse.
Oh yeah, no, that's
so here's
a leg support, so you clear the Z.
This is the top of the one that I broke. It's kind of.
I have one in the back corner of my office. It's currently holding a bunch of garbage.
So it has a Prusa on it?
No. Garbage. Well, I need to find my garbage, I guess.
That's harsh.
No, good. Like,
I mean, I guess a lot of Folgertech FT5 parts are sitting on it right now.
Sounds good.
So garbage.
Yeah.
Oh man!
And look,
the Lax not getting a lot of slack tonight.
I'm not gonna hate too much on Joe Prusa because he's a decent 3D printer designer.
He can also put together a description of how you need to assemble the printer, and like that's my biggest concern when it comes to fucking Folgertech.
Yeah, as I said, he's a good 3D printer designer, but he's a really good marketer, and so I'm not going to hate on the guy because he's made design decisions that, while I may not agree with, whatever. Although, speaking of 3D printers, designers, we have the man, the myth, the cat food.
The cat food.
Blue cheeses.
That's a lot of food.
How's it going, boss?
Oh, look at the T-shirt.
I just drove 6 hours in a straight line from Anaheim back to San Jose. So,
Welcome back to the real world.
thanks, man.
That sounds like like half of what I did for our honeymoon. Well, my honeymoon, not our honeymoon.
Look,
We
all right,
know what you really meant. Wink,
Look,
wink.
y'all are on the West
Why
Coast.
you talk like
Whatever
that?
y'all do is on your own time.
It's the West Coast, dude. Come on.
It's okay if it's a three-way. There's the honey in the middle. You know that song.
Oh, wait. So,
There's a honey in
I'm
the
sorry, I'm
middle.
going to preempt everyone else for a second. So, Max, your video's kind of stuttered for a sec.
Oh.
All right. Let's see if we can get it back established.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Internet in the shed ain't too good.
Row.
Yeah.
Printers
All
on
right, you guys
fire.
fix the video. I got something to show you. I gotta take it off my printer first.
Is this the 20th?
This is shots from V5.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Why not?
Super prototype.
The drone printer?
Passion V3.
Or is this the Mobius printer that actually prints in the past?
Or is it in the prints in the future?
Well, there
No, the
was
past.
a design
Past is more important.
with the Delta with 2 effectors, so it printed midair, right? We're running that for a while.
Yeah.
Quadhesion.
We were never supposed to speak of that.
We don't speak of such atrocities.
We didn't need a build plate. It was harmonious.
Yep. It printed the build plate as it needed the build plate.
Yes.
It only prints parts that are exactly the same on top and bottom.
Yep.
And just all the overhangs all the time.
All the overhangs.
All the time.
All the time.
Oh, wait.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I know what this is.
Oh,
So-
we all know what that is.
Yeah, but the people on the stream probably don't.
Nope.
So this has been in development for a while, and this is what that new ADT gear was actually developed for. This is Mobius 3. It still has the gull-wing doors that you all like. It's printed a little differently. It allows me to fine-tune the filament path much better. But it still has all the same stuff. There's a lot of stuff inside that I can't show because I don't want to take this thing apart. That stabilizes the idler gear a lot more. In the previous Mobius 2, the idler gear like to tweak off a little bit, and then you started grinding those BMG gears, and what that ended up doing over time is if you didn't have the hardened gears, the gear pieces would end up inside the filament path and get sucked in and then clog your nozzle. Fun. So we fixed that. Other than that, I mean, aside from the 45-degree rotation on the stepper motor, it's pretty much the same one. Basically an incremental improvement over what we've all been using for a long time now. But yeah, this is going to get released soonish, in the next probably month or so. So keep an eye out for that one.
So, do you want to talk anything else about anything else?
Nope. Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing.
I mean, I didn't want to steal any pages from your book when I was on my rant earlier, but
Yeah. Well, we already have the steps discussion. I'm not awake enough for that right now, or in the good state of mind. By the way, guys, go buy some t-shirts. Come on.
Yeah.
Represent.
We need a link.
Stop
We need
rubbing your
links.
nipples.
The link is on the webpage. I don't
Yeah.
know how much more. Do you want me to put a blink tag on it?
Yes, because I would see it then.
Okay.
Voron
Yeah,
Design.
click on the merch.
Oh,
on the
there's when did that show up? I was just here like 4 days ago.
Yeah.
It's been there.
I've been
Now,
blind, and now I
I
can
freely
see.
admit that I have not purchased any MZBot
We don't
or
have
Voron
anything in
Design
that collared format
swag.
for you fancy people that wear collar shirts as pajamas, as you do.
Yeah, we need a polo.
There is a
like
polo.
you make me an embroidered like button-down shirt. I'll rock that.
Okay. All right, I'll see what we can do.
Boxers.
I like the pullover hoodie.
Boxers.
Boxer briefs, by the way. Boxer briefs. Precise.
MZBot condoms coming up. Getting late, guys.
What?
I'm way too sober for this.
I know, right?
It's almost midnight. Can I be stupidly tired?
Oh my god! Yeah, and I've got to be up at 4:30, so this is going to need to draw to a close here in a little bit. So, for those of you guys on the West Coast, I apologize for cutting it short. But
Quite all right.
It's not even 9.
yeah, well, it's almost 11 my time.
Same here.
So
Almost midnight here.
What? It's not even 9.
look, I can't help you're geographically challenged. All right.
I'm waiting for somebody from Germany to pop up. It's like, it's the next day. I have my coffee.
Look, yeah, I'm waiting for Ampex or Imutef to pop in on this joint and be like, 9, continue.
I just woke up to this shit.
So basically,
Like,
you need to
seriously,
have
I mean, it's not like I don't have my like annual review tomorrow at 9 a.m. that I've got to drive 2.5 hours to be to, but whatever. I'll rock this shit.
So, anyways, just a quick touch on that Mobius 3 release now that it's in the wild. Hardware-wise, I think the only major change is the bearings, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me talk about that. Actually, good point. We've lost the M3 by 12 on the sides and gained one extra M3 by 30 for the base. The bomb change obviously for the gear. Gear, this will work with this, so don't sweat that. Let's see. And yes, the bearings are different. The bearings, I'm using the same bearings as the 2.0 or 2.1 and 1.6, the F695, I believe.
Yep, F695.
So basically the smaller flange bearings that we've been using for idlers and stuff. And that's literally for, I needed smaller bearings to make this thing work better. Other than that, the bomb pretty much stays the same.
And there have been several of us running the prototypes of this particular extruder. The Mobius 3 is the name we've adapted for it. And it's very much the same as the Mobius 2. It's set it and forget it.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say people should upgrade to 3 versus 2 is that one issue of the idler gear tweaking out on you, which could happen, and then you end up with a bunch of shmoo in your nozzle, and that's not fun to pull out.
Yeah. Not everyone has had the Mobius 2 end up with a bunch of shmoo in the nozzle, but
True. I'm just talking about the fact that the people that run, spoolful after spoolful, mainly, I mean, we've had basically all of the printed forward guys. I've been a test bed for Vorons because they run them 24 hours a day,
Yep.
non-stop all the freaking time. And it's like we're basically putting more hours on these machines than, Creality ever did on theirs before I shipped them. And they charge
It's one of those
Not
things
fun.
where it's a need versus necessity.
Right. It's more of a like, hey, your car's gonna get catch on fire, go take it to a dealer versus we might have had some issue with a seat. It might get uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's warranty
This is not the first. This is the latter.
Yeah, like put it this way, up until about a month ago, I was running a full release of the Mobius 2 with like the original V-Lock gear designs and like version 1.0 of the Mobius 2, and I didn't have a single issue with it.
Me as well.
I finally retired that to upgrade it to a release Mobius 2 a week before Mobius 3 happened.
So one of the big things about the Mobius 3 that a lot of people that have been trying to print a Mobius 2 will like is the overhangs or lack thereof. It should print just fine.
I nuked the little bar in the back because we don't need it, and it never printed. Even on any of my machines, it printed well. It looked like crap, but it was hidden, so it was fine. I didn't care about it, but there's no need for it.
I mean, there's still steep overhangs in it in the Mobius 3.
Oh, there is, but the overhangs I'm talking about.
45 degrees is steep.
Well,
I mean,
this is
Voron.
The one I'm talking about is the reliefs that were in there for the screws. Everyone was having problems printing that.
Yeah, because you basically print it and then print the thing, and then you're trying to basically print a screw hole in midair, and
yep.
Yeah,
no good.
On the Mobius 2, the only way to get a decent Mobius 2 base was to print 3 of them.
Yep, that's what I did for Printed Forward. I'd run a plate of 4 of them, and I just have a bin full of Mobius bases that I would throw in each kit, essentially.
Yeah.
The Mobius 3 uses less plastic too. It's like 20 or 30 grams lighter.
Yeah, the Mobius 3 has been more. It's been streamlined a little bit. I won't lie, it's a little bit trickier to assemble, and that's coming from someone who's assembled them both. But it is far easier to print. So if I have to worry about assembling it and taking a little more time to assemble versus having to bend something because the print failed, I'll take something that's a little, it takes a little more thought to assemble versus something that prints easier.
I think what Unregistered was saying, though, was getting at is if you have an M2 already and it's printing fine, you probably don't necessarily have to print the M3.
Right. Precisely.
The M2 is a great extruder. It's just been improved upon.
Still got the doors. It's good.
Somebody's got to hit up the AliExpress sellers and tell them to put up a Mobius 3 kit now.
Yeah, how many people do we need to notify when we change the revisions? That's at this point.
There's quite a few of Ali stores actually carrying Mobius and Voron kits now. I've seen screw kits. I haven't seen a frame kit yet, but I've seen a belt and pulley set from Pouch too, I believe. So there are a few kits on there.
Yeah, and and I know that Paramount is paying attention to what we're doing too.
What's happening?
Somebody's
unscrewing something.
Oh, I'll mute my mic. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and I was just saying that Paramount 3D is paying attention to what we're doing as well, because so many of us use Paramount stuff that I know that they are paying attention to this whole kerfluffle, so watch this space. For those of you who are not in Canada. Sorry, Dad.
That's okay. I got 10 spools of ABS Plus on the way.
Oh, goddamn. My parents says it's 16 degrees in the shop.
Yeah, we found a supplier up here that was carrying ABS Plus for $24 Canadian a spool, I believe. Yeah. And we bought it all out pretty much.
That's like free almost.
Well, with shipping, it's like 28, which is $2 US.
Hey, I got the camera working.
Holy crap!
Is that Uber?
Creepy.
That's Uber?
For realsies?
Hi.
It's like,
Hey,
This
man,
one I'm
what's
not
up?
freezing in the Arctic.
we all look the
you.
same in Canada?
You're not always
Choose that
covered in
as a
ice.
potato?
Nope.
It's his Raspberry Pi camera.
No, this is a 2001 Logitech with
Oh, sweet Jesus.
bright light technology.
I feel like we just
Is
went
it the
on.
little sphere, the white sphere with the turquoise lens?
How many frames per second? One.
One.
Frames per minute? What?
Well, the good camera is on the Voron, so
0 to 60? Yes.
Eventually.
So, like, real talk, guys. As fun as it's been, and as much as like I would want to carry this on, I literally have to be up in 5 hours.
Can
So
do
I
that?
need to wrap this
Go to
up,
bed.
unfortunately, which means this whole shenanigan has to wrap up. So before I go, though, if you guys have anything you want to say, have at it.
Oh,
Whoops.
Oh,
That fucked up.
he did.
Yeah, don't use your phone.
Anybody?
Oh,
Lost
okay.
call?
Remember the YouTube's about 30 seconds behind.
No, that was me trying to get a call on hang out on my phone.
Oh,
So if you want to say anything to all of our 20 viewers right now, this is the time for it.
download Voron Cura. Use Clipper.
yep. Don't bother with the duet.
Build more Vorons.
Build more
Save your money.
Vorons. There's a so I was recently going behind Doc on the Reddit and looking at all the I had to add flair to the new redesign for everyone.
Thank you, by the way, for that.
Yeah,
Much
no problem.
appreciated.
I was surprised by the number of people that have 2 Voron 2s. It was actually quite a bit more than I thought.
Just money coming out the ears, man. That's it.
It's awesome. It was awesome. Like we have several that have 1s and 2s, but a lot of people have 2 or more 2s. So I say a lot. You could probably count them on 2 hands, but that's quite a lot.
That's surprising still. Yeah.
What I'm going to be curious for is who has a V2.0 the longest.
I was probably
Are
I
we
seen one the
talking?
other
race.
2.0 that works?
A working V2.0 the longest. I seen one the other day. Somebody posted in Reddit or this Discord about it.
Is this Pretty Black?
I can't remember.
Pretty Black, I know, is doing the whole PLA or PETG or other bullshit. I'm not really sure which one they're doing, but I don't know. I went through the whole PETG thing, like especially like Max, and everyone knows about my
It's Andre.
regulations when it comes to PETG.
It
Yeah.
works.
He built a registered using PETG and then started having problems with it, and then I started freaking out, and then I found out much later that he printed it in PETG. And then
I mean, to be fair, I think a lot of it was an issue with the belts, but ultimately PETG's not good.
Yeah, if you're one of those who thinks, okay, I'll just print it in PETG and then reprint it in ABS, hit up PIF and get somebody to print the parts for you. Because by the time you print it all in PETG and then reprint it in PIF or reprint it in ABS, you're going to spend quite a bit of money and time. Just pay somebody $60 to print your parts, man. Trust me, I've been through it. It sucks.
PETG is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
PETG
Honestly, I mean, if you have to bootstrap, in the middle of Africa, and there's no PIF support, print it in PLA. Don't ever enclose it. Only print PLA on it. You'll have a better printer than what you had before.
Yeah, and actually, that was one of Like the first time I interacted with Max was on Reddit when I had printed my stuff in PETG and was having ringing problems out the ass. I was like, so what can I do to fix this? And he's like, so you've done it in PETG. How about this? You do your XY joints in PLA, don't enclose it, and call it good. And then you can use the settings that I recommend. And so that was our first interaction.
And then I sent you some carriages.
Yes. And I may have sent you a couple of bottles of scotch as well.
That is absolutely true. Thank you, sir.
But no, like my PETG carriages literally had the set screw for the bed that, you know, you had the nylock and then the 40 millimeter screw and the spring and then your bed. Literally the nylock was pulling through the PETG, and I wish I had still photos of that, and I'll try and dig them up sometime and I'll post them in Discord for, you know, the sake of prosperity. But no, it totally was PETG. If you want to make water bottles, it's awesome. If you want to make a printer, pick something else, please.
It's good for vase mode for your flower pots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flower pots.
Christmas trees.
Christmas trees.
Yeah, like PETG, people say, oh, it's got a higher, you know, glass transition point than PLA.
Not by much, dude.
Not by much, but it still gets weak too. That's the thing. It's, you know, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Plastic has kind of the same thing where it'll start to fail before it melts.
Yeah.
So.
ABS curve is like this. PETG curve is kind of like this. It basically just turns into gummy bears and goes to shit.
It's a really interesting change when you're looking at PLA versus PETG versus ABS. PLA is going to be more rigid structurally, but the rigidity is going to be a problem because it's not going to be able to return to the previous states. PETG is going to be a problem because it just gets soft and floppy and just
springy.
You have just bolts bending over, which is a bad problem when those bolts are holding up your belts. All of a sudden, your belts are just going to flip off
and shred themselves.
I never had that problem, but I did have I'd have to level my bed every third print, break out the feeler gauges and everything. And well, there's my problem. It's because the thing was pulling out.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing sometimes, just not in this application.
ABS is a little bit more flexible when you're looking at it in comparison to the other two, but it does better because there's a middle ground when it comes to ABS.
Right. As a Bernier basically said, if you look at your car, 90% of it is ABS, and the rest of it is ABS polycarbonate blends.
Yep, it's ABS, ABS PC, Polypro, some nylon, some exotic stuff, flexible nylon, flexible PVC, and some other random boutique plastic. But yeah, your car isn't made out of old water bottles and corn plastic. It's ABS. It's an industry standard plastic for a reason.
I do have to ask, what the fuck is Andre doing?
Not 100% sure.
Looking at my feeler.
He's. Are you looking? Are we looking at a Benchy?
That Benchy screaming, "Kill me!"
My first V2 print.
Oh, sweet Jesus!
This was my second V2.
All right, guys. As much fun as this is, I think Doc's gonna actually fall asleep on his floor.
Yeah.
We should let him go.
Yeah.
The leader.
Where did he go? Oh, there he is.
He got up all.
No, sorry. I was letting my dog in, but yeah,
fix
I
us.
am about to pass out. So look, literally, if I didn't have to be at the office tomorrow, I would totally continue this on until I fell asleep in
It's
my
this
chair right
whole
here.
terrible thing about Mondays, man. You gotta like go to work.
Yeah, no, like I have to be a responsible human being and shit. So,
So do I.
guys,
Till 3 p.m. So.
yeah.
Yep.
We don't have your
Afternoon
hours, but
shift.
But look, seriously, guys, thank you guys all for showing up and talking shit and talking printers and everything. I appreciate it. I'm sure the rest of the community appreciates it too. If you have questions and you're in the community and like anything of our diatribes and rants and whatnot that you want to know more about, post up in our Discord, post up in Reddit, post up in the comments here. And otherwise, guys, have fun. Build your stuff and stay safe. Don't set your mom's basement on fire.
See you.
See ya.
take care, guys.
See ya.
Deuces.